Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Christian Hangout number 20. And I guess because we have a number that ends with 0, that makes it a milestone of some sort. We actually reached number 20, so great. And with us today, we have Gregory, CARLIN, LUMEN et al., and William Scott, and all returning. No newcomers for this one, at least not as of right now. Maybe some people will join later. We'll see. But yeah, I didn't pick a specific topic for this episode because I figured in light of the presidential election, that's probably what's on most of our minds, and that'll probably be a springboard to talk about a lot of different topics. And so it's getting pretty interesting out there, isn't it, guys?
It is.
Yeah. It's burning.
The left is lefting with their riots and stuff in protest of Trump, and
dude, it's the ultimate breaking of a stereotype. How can those homosexuals be so violent?
yeah, I don't know.
Well, they do punch like sissies. If you watch videos of black people beating up whites, it's always from behind, running, ganging up, never a fair fight.
Yeah, I saw a video where it was on a blog I read. They put up a video about this. Is this guy getting beat up for being a Trump voter, and they're like, "Yo, he voted Trump. Yo, beat his ass," or whatever. And,
yeah, whoop his ass.
Yeah,
you
saw that video.
You know that you're in deep trouble when the racist impersonation of your race sounds exactly like you. Seriously, dude, when somebody mocks, usually the essence of mockery is taking a feature and hyperbolizing it, taking it to the extreme. But you actually find black people that talk like that.
Oh yeah, every one of them on that video. It was crazy. Yeah. Just relishing beating this guy up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's like, what are we coming to? I mean, and I remember seeing apparently one of these riots, they're yelling like, "This is democracy." It's like, so you're saying democracy is mob rule? Well, yep, that's what we've been saying.
Well, America's not a democracy. That's the point. The founders were mob rule.
Right, we're a constitutional republic, even though it's not a huge difference, but yeah.
Well, you're a constitutional republic, but I'm basically ambivalent towards the founders, because Mr. Mark had a good point last week, or last Hangout. I'm sorry. Taken to its logical conclusion, the United States Constitution can only end in this. So they were counting on the decency of the people to not even consider such a fate. But counting on decency and common sense isn't good enough. You have to put it in writing, as any kike lawyer will tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I know Anti-Dem has commented on this before about the Constitution. He said it's basically a gentleman's agreement for a high trust group of people, but like once you don't have those people anymore, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And he had a good answer on Ask FM about that subject. So,
doesn't Liberia have your exact same constitution?
Yeah, that's one talking point that's come up recently, that their original constitution was, I don't think it's the exact same constitution, but it was very close. So it had most of the same stuff in it. And look what happened to them.
Yeah, basically life can be analogized. I know many people do this. It's tiresome, but it is actually like poker. You're dealt a hand, and based on that hand, you can make moves. So if you make good moves with a bad hand, you have a shot. But if the hand is absolute crap, what can you do? You can't give a good constitution to people with a 60 IQ or 85 in the case of America.
Yeah.
So what can they do with that? And average means half of them are dumber than that.
Exactly.
And this is not even disparaging at this point. These are humans, at least, and it's damnation for them. If the Democrats are going to keep them on those violent vote plantations, and the alt-right wants to kick them out. They're screwed.
Yeah. Wait, you said who wants to kick them out?
I think the alt-right. Don't they want, or they want segregation?
Well, yeah, I'd say that's probably more of what the alt-right wants. They think we just need to be separated because we got to stop fighting.
Your father saying, "I'm not kicking you out, but I'm not buying you food anymore."
Yeah.
So
I mean, that does have a certain. I mean, you have to adapt to a system like that would strengthen people. I mean, and I mean that.
Yeah, but this adaptation for strife usually is a mountain of corpses. So it's not like libertarians say, "Oh, the filth will just clear itself out." No. It's gonna take a lot of bodies for only the strong to survive.
Well, that's how it clears itself out, I guess, or clears itself up.
Yeah, but you're living next to them. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Bullets don't discriminate. They fly in all fire spread in all directions.
Mm-hmm. You know, we had some good conversations before we went live, and we were talking about how in Romania, I mean, not to change the subject here, but talked about how in Romania you're able to have more red-pilled discussions with people.
Yeah.
It's something I've been curious about Europe. Like, I mean, Europe is basically formed out of what were historically ethnic tribes that essentially built their civilizations, and like now it looks like it's just a bunch of lines on a map. But I mean, I guess there's something more organic about the way Europe was formed as opposed to America. I mean, not that America doesn't have anything organic about it, but like it does. It was kind of developed in, as we were discussing earlier, as a constitutional republic. Like it was sort of formed more intellectually than organically in some ways. So I was just going to ask, like, in Europe, is there a more instinctive tribal sense, do you think? Just that people have a general mindset of like,
I will definitely answer your question, but Mr. Lumen wants to say something.
Sure.
Thanks.
What is it?
Thanks so much, Gregory. I just think that we should definitely have a bit of a victory lap. You know, this is the great thunderous triggering is reverberating, you know, through safe spaces across the land right now. And, yeah, and you know, I just haven't felt this good in a while. And you know, I think the word of the day or the word of the week, maybe word of the year or 4 years, is a fine German lexicological concoction, Schadenfreude. You know, this is the time when we take pleasure in, you know, and you know, not to get complacent. You know, there's work to do, but we take pleasure just because they're so stunned. They don't know what to do. They don't. I mean, we all know this. You know, we all know that just from our personal experiences that anytime they get challenged, they just kind of fall apart. And welcome, Mr. Citadel. Yeah. But you know, seeing it now, you know, I was walking around, just going shopping, and I was like, wow, I feel pretty good right now. Why do I feel so good? And you know, I mean, I prayed before the election. I thanked God after the election, but then I had to say to myself, I feel good because we won. And then I got mad. I'm like, this is how they've felt for, you know, many decades now. And I just think, you know, I think some triumphalism or some Trumpism is in order.
Well, definitely. Sorry, what?
Can I counter signal Mr. Lumen about what he said?
Well, if you want to, sure.
Here's the thing. I was an actual dyed-in-the-wool Marxist.
Whoa. There's like kind of a hiss on your side. It's really high-pitched.
And how about now?
It's a little bit better, I think.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Right. So I was actually one of them. And I can tell you from experience what I felt. You're never happy as the left. You're never. You always see the boogeyman. The ideology itself keeps you nice and paranoid. So you never have these moments of satisfaction of building something for the ages. It's always chasing the patriarch boogeyman.
Yeah.
It's the sense of the ideology. You can't escape it.
All right. I mean, that's the thing about the left. There really is no end point to it. It's always like there's always like, okay, we've done this. Now we have to do this. And like
perpetual revolution. And after all, it's said
whoa,
that.
whoa, whoa! That loud noise is back. That I don't know what it is. Like, is the acoustics in your room or something?
How about now?
I think it's just like when you talk loudly. Maybe I don't know. You guys are hearing it too, right?
I hear it too, but it's not too overwhelming on my end.
Maybe it's my headphones. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is. I mean, I assume you're just talking as normal. It's not. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it. But.
I don't think I can do something about it. I'm sorry. I'll mute myself.
All right. Well, just when if you're not talking, I mean, we definitely want to hear from you. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But you're talking about how the left is all about perpetual revolution and.
Yeah. A Marxist has the ability to not care about the individual while weeping for the masses, and that's basically it. You're always trying to change things, and always it never ends. It's chaotic by definition. We represent order, and they represent chaos. It's measurable.
Well, I know that the way Brett Stevens often talks about it is that leftism is ultimately about the utopian belief in equality, that like everything must always be made more equal. Everything always has to be more egalitarian. But because equality is a myth and we'll never have perfect equality, there's always like something that needs to be smashed. There's always something that needs to be destroyed because it's not equal enough. I mean, so it's just going to be a never-ending cycle because of that.
Fascism is basically recognizing the order of the universe and trying to organize society as close to that as possible while keeping your humanity. When you have the left who has a perfectly subjective point of view, subjectivity doesn't have an end point. It doesn't have a rule book or guidebook because it always changes. It's subjective. It depends on opinion. So it's not finite by nature.
Yeah.
Well, and Gregory, you're coming from a more of an abstract intellectual viewpoint. I'm talking about I guess who the people that Lenin called the useful idiots, the drones. They're just the people who are put the French flag over their Facebook profile photo, stuff like that. They're just like they don't understand the intellectual nuances of it. They're just like this isn't right, this isn't fair, this and they just I just don't think that they realize that they could lose, and I love it.
To my previous point, fascism is recognizing the order of nature. Nature doesn't have equality. Nature has charity, it has help, but it's not a natural concept, equality. And you can't force it to be. All the massacres of the last century came from this idea that we can somehow forge utopia in a flawed and animalistic world. We're animals. We have needs. Resources are limited. Brains break down and malfunction. People go insane. They can be corrupted. They can be blackmailed. You can never square this circle. You can't have equality.
That's true about brains breaking down too. I think we're seeing that on the left even. I mean, they're really just going insane. Like what LUMEN was saying earlier about safe spaces. I mean, it's when you see these people always on campuses talking about their safe spaces and how we need to create safe spaces. It's like, and like if you say anything they don't like, they like break down in tears and they just like lose it. It's like, my goodness, like these are future leaders. These are future, like these are really just you're just creating people who will be useful idiots, as you said earlier. Like, I mean, it's just these people are not good for anything except parroting the narrative or whatever. I mean, but they seem utterly incapable of acting with any sort of strength or virtue.
It's the R and the K type.
Now that is scientific because you have a fear center in the brain called the amygdala, and basically it must be warmed up before you reach adulthood, because you're subjecting yourself to smaller and ever increasing amounts of danger, stress, hardship. By the time you reach an adult, your amygdala is not too overreactive, but it's not too rigid either. So they lack this because they live a sheltered existence and their amygdala is atrophied. So the slightest provocation causes them this discomfort. I truly believe that they are having panic attacks because of this. I saw some kids who were abused in Romania. Their parents were paranoid and locked them up for their entire life. They would shiver when you talk to them.
Wow.
The normal stress of meeting a new person, it might make you uncomfortable, but to them it was a traumatic experience. And the amygdala doesn't, if on a side note, if it goes in the other way, so for example it gets too traumatized, then you have PTSD because it doesn't recover back to a normal state. It's a balancing act with this.
Yeah. Did you have something to say, Mark, or?
No, I was just listening.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we haven't heard from you yet, so I was wondering if you had any thoughts. We were just talking generally about different things like Trump and...
Yeah, we get it. He's British and he chose the best religion in the world. We get it.
I was just looking on Twitter, actually, and Michael Moore, who is, of course, very well known, has decided that he's basically going to reinvigorate the spirit of the 1960s with a new decisive opposition movement to impeach President Trump. This movement, he says, is going to be made up of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, MoveOn.org, which is the George Soros's organization, the hip hop community, and DFA, etc. And I was just reading that and thinking, Donald Trump's got to be pretty terrified of the hip hop community coming after him. I mean, fucking hell. You don't want any with enemies like Ice-T and and other people like that. It's just going to be crazy.
You will now feel the wrath of Wiggers.
When you look at this election, I think there's going to be a lot of celebratory feeling, not just in the United States, but around the world. I mean, you've already seen the response from Moscow, from France, from Austria, Germany as well. But this will ultimately, I think, be short-lived. And I think we have to be sort of prepared for that. This is...
Yeah.
And look, this was always going to happen. You had this is a populist movement. Trump is an unabashed populist. He's not a real rightist or a right-wing figure in any sense. He's not a conservative, so he's not part of the GOP or the establishment, but he is a naked populist. That has served our ends, and it will continue to serve our ends for as long as it can. But this isn't going to achieve the final goal.
It's a stopgap, essentially.
It's a stopgap, but what I see happening, and even voices on the left have talked about this. As an article on the alt-right saying that basically, even though Trump's now won, the alt-right will kind of come apart as other movements in the past have. And I think that diagnosis is probably pretty accurate, considering the dynamics that the alt-right will have to face now in the fact that Donald Trump is in power. It's not the guy they wanted got into power. It's not Hillary Clinton. In some ways, they would have done better had Hillary Clinton won. And as such, they're going to face a huge sort of drop-off, I think, in activity. You're not going to see the kind of things you saw beforehand with image boards, poll, there's sort of the mass trolling that went on during the campaign and things like that. It really turned into a mass movement. That will kind of fall away as what I call the day players, or people who are doing this casually, fall away. But what it will leave behind is a very committed and enlarged core intelligentsia on the right, and that is good. That is very good. That will continue. That won't go away.
Well, I definitely think that, yeah, people definitely are going to keep fighting. I mean, they're not just going to say, all right, Trump won, because I mean, the alt-right existed before Trump really, before he ran for office. So I mean, they're, you know, these.
But I mean, there are
a lot of people.
There's a sizable contingent, and it may even be the majority of the people who have used alt-right or have been involved in its kind of operations, who are now going to say, okay, we won. That's it. And they're going to be content with that, depending, of course, on how well Donald Trump keeps to his promises that he made during the primary. If he does that, people are just going to be, you know, Milo Yiannopoulos, people like that, they're all going to be quite satisfied with the Trump administration. They're not going to, they don't have any reason to want to push it further. And I think I'm going to do some kind of like full treatment of the situation probably next week in an article. But I want to say that if in the best case scenario, Trump is America's Viktor Orban, the right needs to be, it's not even good enough for it to be Jobbik. It has to be even further right than Jobbik. It has to be much more radical in its view. But it has to fulfill the same function. So while Orban provides sort of a covering space, you know, a safe space, if you will, for these ideas to percolate, expand, bring in the most useful individuals, talented people, then Trump has to do that for the United States. But he, in and of himself, is not the end game. He is, like you say, a stopgap.
Yeah, and he's, I mean, we could very well, you know, it's highly likely that, you know, we're still heading headlong towards the Kali Yuga. But
yes,
like right now, at this point, you know, for me, being in the U.S., this means that the borders are going to be shut down. I think he is going to do it. It means that for a generation, the Supreme Court is going to be conservative. I'm putting that in quotation marks, or as the kids do, into a triple set of parentheses. You know, so you know, we're still going to be able to have our guns, you know, so if nothing else, it definitely gives us more time to get prepared, you know, because if you're just coming around to these ideas right now, and this is why I do my best to hold back from disdain for people who aren't quite there yet, because I was there too. But if you're just coming around to this, you're going to need some time to get ready for what's coming, and that's good.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in the pipeline who are coming along and still developing their own understanding of the world, and that does take time. And I think that if we're looking to the future of some kind of inevitable endpoint to all this, and you know, everything is still shifting left. The Overton window is still shifting left. What's happened is it's been widened, so it's widening as it's shifting left, and you know, some of the alt-right is being managing to edge its way in on the far right of it. But you will, I think, if we're heading towards that kind of inevitable point, that point of maximum entropy when things just begin to disintegrate, that's going to be post-Trump. It won't happen during his presidency.
Yeah.
It'll either happen probably in the one after, or even more likely, I'd say, the one after that. And Trump will provide this sort of stopgap measure, because while he's president, a lot of the bad things are still going to be going on. Yes, he may shut down immigration, but you still have the birth rate problem. You know, the ultimate demographic change is still happening. And with regard to economics as well, there are some trade policies you can employ which will help manufacturing in the US. But the problems that relates to within the economy are not just a symptom of bad deals. They're a symptom of how the entire sort of capitalist economic structure is actually, in terms of what it values principally. So while he may be able to provide some relief there, you've still got this inevitable reckoning to happen. And that's what we have to be prepared for. What I'm saying is there's going to be a lot of people who are resting on their laurels, and that's fine. You know, that those people were maybe not the people we were most interested in recruiting anyway. But I'm thrilled that this has happened, because not only from a personal level, that it does provide ample opportunity for some very well-earned gloating, but also just from the point of view of, yes, buying us time, widening that Overton window, like I said, and geopolitically averting what looked to be a reasonably likely endpoint of absolute disaster geopolitically. You know, we could have headed into World War III, as some Moscow analyst said. If Hillary Clinton had been elected, there was a very high probability of that. We've averted that, so this is very good. People should be celebrating it, but we've still got to be focused, you know, on our end goal, not to say we've done it, go to sleep.
Well,
Yeah,
it's kind of a litmus test in a way. You know, I mean, it
Yes.
shows that the average man is amenable to, speaking out against globalism, and that gives, you know, the intelligentsia in our movement, you know, guys who are, you know, who've been doing this for a while. It gives them more time to organize and galvanize that, you know, the plebes.
And I don't want to sound totally cynical about it, because I do think the voters who propelled this victory, they deserved this victory. They deserve to have a point where they can say we really did win here, and we at least we have some of our dignity left. Because the whole Clinton campaign, and more importantly the media, really spat upon particularly Midwestern people, whites, white women in general. I mean, look at the backlash that white women are now facing for the unexpected result that they actually supported Trump by the majority. I read something from somebody, I think it was Samantha Bee, who's absolutely despicable, releasing something saying, we white women now have to pay, we have to suffer for what we've done to women of color and Hispanic women. And it's just, oh, fucking hell, somebody grab the machine gun. People, they deserve to bask in this. They deserve to gloat. They deserve to have a good time, because they have certainly not had it for the past 8 years.
You know,
yeah,
I was just going to say, I know we've been talking about how we're celebrating, we're happy, and don't get me wrong, I am happy Trump won, but it's like after he won, all I can think is like, all right, now what comes next? Like, now I've really got to buckle down and use this, like, this time that we have now is very important, so I better use it. And I guess for me, I'm always thinking about like what I have to do next to improve myself and whatnot, and prepared for things. So,
speaking of Samantha Bee, Mr. Mark mentioned it. I saw a segment, one of her shows, where she actually goes to Russia and speaks to a Russian parliamentarian, and he was red-pilled live, and it didn't matter. He talked about whites getting displaced in Europe, and he talked about going to New York and not seeing all Americans.
Vladimir Zhirinovsky, head of the LPDR party.
Yeah. Are they right-wing extremists and quotes, or
they are part of these what's called the systemic opposition in Russia. So they're one of the 4 main parties in the Duma who vote. The system sort of is they vote for basically whatever the Kremlin wants, but they're sort of they like Vladimir Putin, but they're very critical of the United Russia Party, is the thing. And a lot of people say they're sort of setups. They're convenient foils for Vladimir Putin to like make out that there's a real opposition, but they're not. You know, it's not a real opposition. But yes, the LPDR it stands for Liberal Democratic Party, but they're neither very liberal nor very democratic. It's almost like the name of North Korea. But yeah, they are ostensibly nationalistic. Not as far right as other parties. I mean, you could look at something like Pamyat, which is a Tsarist party, and there are a few others, but they're the acceptable kind of face of nationalism in Russia. And yeah, he does openly talk about the race issue and the Islam issue in Russia. And I like the guy. He's a funny guy, actually.
Yeah, he is. Indeed.
It's very much the party of him. The party. It's a little like UKIP with Nigel Farage. It's mainly about this sort of one character who basically is a household name in Russia. And but yeah, he's fun to watch. He's had quite a few rants in the Duma where he's made some pretty funny jokes.
What's the guy's name?
Vladimir Zhirinovsky.
Vladimir Zhirinovsky. Okay.
He actually, during the primary campaign, he tried to make out that he was related by blood to Donald Trump, and he wanted a DNA test.
Great.
Well, judging by his actions, he may be related to Bill Clinton. In fact, we all might be related to Bill Clinton.
God help us.
Oh man.
Well, I
Yeah,
remember
I saw him. He was in tears when Hillary Clinton gave her concession speech. I was quite surprised about that.
really.
That's someone,
Bill was?
Mr. Mark. You should,
Sort of.
sorry, you should be ashamed of yourself calling Hillary Clinton a he.
No, thinking about Bill Clinton, he was just, he looked very upset, and I don't know, I almost felt something for him. But
Yeah,
then you
Bill
remember
Clinton
that
kind of
he's,
looks like he's.
I
That's
just
damn altruism of you.
yeah, well, but then you got to remember, you know, what he's been involved in, what he's been party to. Here's the thing: I never really subscribed to the idea that the Clintons, were avowed 100% leftist ideologues, because they're not really. They allowed leftist ideologues to get their way.
Yeah, they're just materialists.
For money. But yeah, I mean, you can draw parallels from Hillary Clinton to Yulia Tymoshenko in Ukraine. She's just there for money. It's just about getting rich. She's not. I mean, there were even they talked about how in a private conversations, Hillary was not comfortable at all with gay people. She doesn't like being around them. She didn't support the marriage thing until it became politically expedient to do so. She's not an ardent liberal. She's just a plutocrat. And in that way, I can have some variant of more respect for her than, people like, I don't know, Van Jones or Samantha Bee or these other nut jobs. Yeah, the true believers. Because at the end of the day, a thief is a thief. A thief doesn't destroy a society. It's the liberal ideologues that destroy a society. I'm just glad that she'll now have to sort of be a thief in the sense of mugging people, rather than being a thief in the sense of ruling the entire United States for her own kleptocratic gains.
Yeah. I mean, I think really, I mean, just the idea that there's no more. The Clintons are not going to be in the White House again. It's just like the biggest relief. I mean, the people are just such shameless grifters. It's appalling.
Yeah, and I think they've killed people. I genuinely do believe some people have been silenced because of the stuff they've said.
No, all these mysterious deaths, they're just a coincidence. Don't pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, committing suicide with 4 shotgun blasts in the back of the head.
Yeah, and this somebody on Twitter, like, Hillary's like, Bernie Sanders endorsed me, and somebody on Twitter said,
yeah.
I've never want to end up committing suicide 5 times in the back of the head from a foot away.
I've never bought a newspaper in my life, ever, and I bought one today.
Nice.
It was the headline, Daily Mail, Trump quake. Just I had to get this for history because I think it's a historic election, an historic moment. It's a changing point. I mean, the world, I think, will change because of this. It will change, but it's not the trajectory of everything has not fundamentally changed. It's just the glide path has changed, and I think it's changed in our favor, and we should be very happy about that.
Which British fish wrap had the headline, "What have they done?" And it shows like the Statue of Liberty crying.
Oh, that's the Mirror.
Okay, yeah.
The
like to have
headlines
that
kind of differed. Some are negative, some are positive. Like the Guardian was, oh my God, fascists have taken over the USA, and then Daily Mail was celebrating.
Every headline by what's his name, Galloway.
Oh, not the guy. What's it? The Express, I think, was celebrating and saying this was good. Most people are just shocked. They're just completely blown away here because the media is, for all you can say that the American media was biased and said that Trump didn't have a chance. The British media was just, they didn't think this guy would win anything. He's just been treated as a complete sort of clown over here. And I'm sure that's the case in France and in Germany.
Yeah,
as well.
Your media looks at our media and they're like, what a bunch of pikers.
Yeah, our media is just, it's in one of two camps. It's either very ideologically leftist, either in an explicit way like the Guardian, or just in a kind of implicit way like the BBC, or it's like paparazzi-esque, which is kind of like the Daily Mail and the Sun. They're not right-wing, but they like to embarrass people. They like to agitate. They're a lot like Milo Yiannopoulos in a way.
Yeah, we call that tabloid.
Yeah, they are tabloids, and thus we don't really have a proper right-wing paper or anything like that.
Yeah, but Trump is pro-degeneracy, so we must not forget that he's to the left of us on many issues.
Everyone is to the
That's
left
true.
of us.
No. There are some people who are far to the right of us, believe me.
I know, but I'm being facetious. But you know, it pretty much anyone who stands the slightest chance of attaining electoral office in the West right now is going to be much farther to the left than we want. So, but you know, at the same time, you know, just a couple years ago, I'm sure you guys have seen that clip of Ann Coulter on Bill Maher. Everyone's laughing at her when she said that she thought Trump standard, you know, he would probably be the one to get in. So I mean, it's a step. We've taken a step.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
and then he was practically crying. I'm sorry, I thought I was muted. He was practically crying and pleading with people like, this is not this is not a minor difference. This is the difference between, you know, basically kind of like us, like the difference between some kind of reasonable governance and hell, you know.
Guys, did someone feed Mr. Citadel after midnight? I see 2 icons.
Yeah, I see that too.
It just happens when you log in, like twice. I just got my internet cut off.
At least you're not sounding in stereo.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So does anyone? This is something that's kind of on my mind. You know, seeing the the chimp outs that are starting to crop up in metropolitan areas. Does anyone think that? I mean, this is how I see it. That this is just going to help us. You know, it's like Jared Taylor made that video where he's thanking Black Lives Matter. You know, where
I love you.
Yeah, you are our greatest recruiters. But
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, the you know, you saw that guy getting beat. I saw it on
Yes.
Colin Flaherty. You know, no one knows if he voted for Trump, but they're beating him. You know, this group of feral blacks, and they're like, you voted for Trump, you got to pay. You know, what do you guys think? I mean, I'm thinking that
I think so.
happening, and it's gonna help. It's gonna galvanize whites.
And not just physical violence, but the things they've said. I mean, have you guys seen Van Jones's reaction on election night?
Yep, it was delicious.
He has a complete breakdown and starts talking about this was a white lash against a black president and a woman, and they hate that. You know, he just went absolutely nuts. And even the other people on MSNBC were calling him out and saying, you know, you are just basically like sowing fear and terrorism. But that's going to be their reaction because they've been conditioned to think that way. They genuinely believe it. They're not lying. They genuinely do believe it.
Yeah, this is why I don't have like explicit contempt towards blacks, because they can't help themselves, and I don't say that in a patronizing way. It's the truth. When you take a people who, by their disposition and by the way they've been conditioned in their how they've been socialized, this is the inevitable outcome. You know,
it's not just conditioning either. It's the environment that they're in.
Well, that's what I mean.
The environment that people have put them in. If you compare how they act to how, say, like people in Uganda react to things, there is a difference there. It is quite different, and it's because of the environment. It's because the situation they've been placed in is not. It's less geared towards their own characteristics, their own psychology, their own kind of spiritual outlook. And thus they really are kind of held hostage in a way, but it's not that they're held hostage to like the evil, right, racist boogeyman. It's that they're held hostage in a system which is not native to them. It's not natural to them. It's not natural for us either, but it's had a disproportionately negative effect on them because of how it interplays with their own characteristics. And thus they've ended up this kind of this paranoid mess that just chimps out every 5 seconds, and everything, anytime anything happens that they perceive as some injustice or some threat, they have an absolute meltdown. But we should remember this isn't just them. There are a hell of a lot of fat feminists out there protesting and crying. I've seen them in tears in YouTube videos, and it's just delicious. But yeah, it makes our point about the left.
To answer your question, I'm kind of black-pilled. I take as an example South Africa. They saw bloody revolutions around them. They literally have pictures on the internet with bathtubs full of white body parts. They know that blacks hunt them down, and still they have fences around their communities, and still, oh, maybe we should help these poor people, let them in, feed them. This is really pathological. This altruism is really, if South Africans still think that we can, multiculturalism works, what chance do we have?
Yeah,
there will be.
There's a difference between South Africans. There are very poor white South Africans, and there are very rich white South Africans. Like, what was that athlete who shot his wife?
Oscar. Yeah,
Oscar Pistorius. Yeah, so there's an example of a very sort of rich, you know, fully into the Rainbow Coalition bullshit. But if you go to like these shanty towns where white South Africans live, they know the realities. You know, the Boer farmers. They know there is just this kind of disparity between rich whites in gated communities in Cape Town and the people who actually have to live with the violence.
They've been isolated too. They've been abandoned by the rest of the world. You know, they've essentially been told that they deserve it.
Yes, that is the opinion of basically every member of the Western intelligentsia.
Yeah, and
well,
that's
a hero for shitlib.
What was that?
Nelson Mandela is a hero for every shitlib on the planet. They wouldn't be thinking about. Jim Jeffries had a routine where, if you want me to do a South African accent, just imagine my Australian accent, but I'm shit to a black person while doing it.
Fucking hell.
That's the perception, and that's how I viewed this before I researched the topic. So it's
yeah, a lot of the people don't know anything about Nelson Mandela, to be honest. Most of the people I've talked to that admire him do not know anything about what actually went on.
I know that,
and they don't think they need to.
Yeah,
I know.
they don't. Even if I told them, even when I told them what the truth about it, they justify it by saying it was for a good cause or something like that.
Yeah, there's your Hillary voter.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think that I know on Cambria Will Not Yield, he talks about the concept of Negro worship being sort of a substitute religion in the West. Like, and I think that just if you can put a sort of benevolent black face on something, that makes people have all kinds of warm fuzzies, because it's like,
oh yeah,
like, oh, black people, they're such an oppressed race. Because
look at the ad for John Lewis. It's making the rounds now. This advert that's been released by John Lewis for Christmas, which shows this a mixed race girl dancing around and jumping on the bed and doing something. It's propaganda, very obviously, but liberals are sort of gushing all over it, saying, "Oh, Trump is a symbol of division. The John Lewis advert is a symbol of unity." It's to be expected.
Well, every black to them is Morgan Freeman. It's this kind of soft spoken,
with a twinkle in their eye.
Yeah, thoughtful. It's like he's gonna school you, but he's okay. He's that's how they see it, and
they're more wise and sagely than
yes, exactly.
That's why they speak so slowly
with such gravitas
and search for words.
And this is kind of just a crude theory I've developed over the years. Actually, it was a while ago, but I noticed, it's almost when you have a prolonged, adolescence, I guess, almost infantilization of, young white people. It's almost a matter of, everyone, everyone else's parents are more cool. They let you smoke pot in the basement, and they, so they look at these. They can't respect their ancestors. They especially when they see these exotic and interesting.
It's called,
yeah, I think that definitely plays a part.
It's called xenophilia, the fascination with anything people and to yourself.
Yes, Lawrence Oster had a very good article on that. I think it was just a little while before he passed away.
Name, please. Lawrence.
Lawrence Oster.
Okay, go on. Thank you for telling me the name.
And then there's oikophobia, which is like the flip side of xenophilia.
Oster was just a Christian, hard right kind of publicist. He's a friend of Mitch's.
He's kind of a paleocon, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah, definitely very much part of the paleocon, and yeah, very interesting stuff that he wrote. Kind of influenced me quite a bit.
Yeah, I remember I used to read him occasionally while he was still alive, but I guess he kind of annoyed me in some ways just because he tended to be a little bit sort of finger waggy. I don't know, like all
paleocons are like that.
Yeah, well, it's just like he had kind of an annoying tendency to sort of be like pedantic with people and like say like he kind of had this air of like, I'm the one true conservative and I decide who's conservative and who's not, and I'm like, come on, dude. Like,
yeah, the National Review has been trying to do that for a long time, and you just can't.
Like you think Theodore Dalrymple isn't a true conservative because he's an atheist or something like that? It's like, well, okay, well, whatever. Like, I don't know. Just seems like kind of petty to me.
And you know John Derbyshire?
Right, him too. He said that about him too, like that because he questions religion, he can't be a true conservative or something. I don't know. I mean, Derbyshire back in a couple years ago kind of went through this phase where he was like exploring atheism, I guess, and I think he's kind of settled down on that a bit. Like, I mean, but I don't know.
The problem with this is they're kind of right, because as a conservative, you believe in objective, attainable goals, and and without God, there is no objective. I know this is a tried and true conservative talking point, but without God, there is no objective reality. It's all subjective. So,
But even that has just become a prop for these people. I mean, it's just something they say because it's almost a Pavlovian thing.
Let me give you an example. I watch a lot of kikes. I saw this in a talk from Dennis Prager. He gave the example in San Francisco. They were proposing legislation that would allow public nudity. And the only reason why it was rejected with one vote, it would be of hygienic reasons, public health. So this shows the liberal disarmament in the face, or subjective disarmament in the face of any issue. Because when talking from a subjective standpoint, why is it wrong to be naked in public? Or quote a more famous YouTuber, that Muslim guy, why is it wrong to drink your dad's cum?
Fucking hell. Yeah, I think I get your point. I think it is generally true. I certainly don't think you can be legitimately on the right and say that you are a secularist. I've met plenty of people on the right who are not religious themselves, but who are not secularists, who say that they would far prefer to live in somewhere with a state religion and simply practice it as if they were believers. And that's, it's not a perfect position, of course, but it is politically rightist because it recognizes the value. It recognizes the value of those institutions at the very least, which is, I mean, it is the red-pilled position to recognize that secularism is essentially not just undesirable, but also kind of impossible. It never really occurs. You always have a state religion. But to your point about conservatives, it becoming this kind of talking point, that is true, because Prager would say, Prager's very right on his point there, that, where's the morality? Where is the questioning of the reason that you aren't naked in public is because of some element of decency, some objective element of decency. But he doesn't take that to its full extent. So for a Christian, it is not only immoral, presumably, to be unclothed in public, but it's also immoral to apostatize. Why hold one to one standard and the other to another? Well, because of mer precious constitution, which of course is the true religion of the conservative. You do have to take it to its absolute pinnacle, which I don't think results in what people like Rosas Rushdoony wanted, which was like this kind of old covenant style ecclesiocracy of you know, everybody being checked every 5 minutes to make sure everyone's being absolutely moral. That's impossible and it's unrealistic. But at least the ideal has to exist, even if people flout the ideal. The ideal has to be there, and it has to be accepted by basically everyone within the nation. Everyone who is considered part of the community has to accept that these are the moral standards that we abide by. We're not going to live up to them all the time because no man is perfect, but these are absolutes. And that does, in many instances, need to be codified into law.
Yes, yes, absolutely. God damn it, you're so eloquent.
And that runs into, inevitable pushback in democracy because of, the vaunted rugged individualism. It's like, which in and of itself, I mean, some eccentricity here and there is good. I mean, I'm an artist, for instance, and but that's where people run into problems. When they do, my thinking on artists and how we ended up with modern art is that artists used to be sort of kept in check by that what you're talking about, Mark, and that's gone now, and so you just have this nihilism in your art, like Caravaggio, for instance, just a master, just one of the best ever. And he was kind of a maniac. He drank, he would carry a sword around. He was hunted down for killing a baron or something. I can't remember, but he was still reined in enough so that he could produce these beautiful pieces. And
Absolutely.
And that's the where okay, we're gonna tolerate your individualism, until it reaches a certain threshold, and that threshold's gone in a secular society, in a democratic society. Without those,
you're certainly right about the point about art. I would say that with democracy, the problem is that people who are on the wrong side of moral issues in a democracy can make their case to people who are in numbers enough that they can actually codify the legal precedent for whatever that issue is. So, for instance, take the issue of sodomy. Very few people statistically engage in it. Tiny fragment of the population. And yet, in a democracy, they are free to make their case through any medium to the plurality of people that their cause is just. And because that issue, along with so many others, are quite nuanced, and you do have to understand the real sort of philosophical arguments and moral arguments, you do kind of have to be of a higher level to understand them. Because of that, they are able to convince majorities. It's why the majority now supports that in most Western countries. Whereas in the past, the majority was just never confronted with the question. It was never asked of them, what do you think of this? The opinion was basically sort of the general understanding. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a debate. It was, this is how it is. And that was handed on down from, of course, the spiritual authority, which was the church. And that once that's been disestablished, once you have a free, open debate about what's moral and what isn't, even a tiny fragment of people who are for some vain thing can, with the right argumentation, with the right platform, convince a majority. Because as I say, the majority of people just they're not designed to make these kind of decisions about society. They're not equal. They're there to be essentially told what is
they need to be led.
Good for them. They need to be led, but they need to be led by the best, not the worst. We don't have an aristocracy in America. We have a kakistocracy. Yeah, it's completely inversed.
Regarding art, if I see it as gunpowder. If you take gunpowder and lay it across a table, it just fizzles out if you light it. But if you constrain it and even put paper around it, then it explodes. So basically, art in the past was natural selection. Artists would constantly flirt with the boundaries of what can be said. Even Shakespeare, he put his plays in other countries, used analogies and things like that. And that's what art flavor. When you can go in all directions, nothing is taboo, nothing is... Art is crap. You constantly crave to shock people, so you wind up drinking blood and making cakes out of your vaginal yeast.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's entirely designed to shock people. I mean, you could look at something like iconographic art, and that isn't designed to shock people. That's, you know, that has a purpose of beauty behind it. Same with a lot of architecture. You know, even modern architecture, you could say, is not really, you know, as ugly as it isn't designed to shock. It's designed usually with a sort of utilitarian mindset to be as practical as possible. But yeah, I mean, you're right about a certain type of art, and not just
you know, the gallery art stuff, not
music and things like that as well. There is this element of wanting to shock, because I think art, much more than it ever was before, is very commercialized. So to make yourself known and therefore to make money, you have to make a name for yourself, and that requires doing shocking things. And what you find about these artists who do shocking things, typically by objective standards, they're not very good artists at all.
And that's a big part of the problem. Yeah. That's I mean, as an artist, you know, I mean, yes, you know, the degeneracy that's crept in, it's repugnant, but more repugnant to me, just as an artist, not even speaking about society, is how lazy it is, you know, because to become a good artist, just like, you know, becoming a good musician, a plumber, whatever, you know, you have to do it a lot, a real lot, and it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of commitment, and it's hard. But you know, we have a society now that not only excuses that but promotes it. You know, there's an artist I like, and he you know, didn't get into it until he was in his 20s, and he already had a bachelor's in communication or something, and he went to grad school, and he was there for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and he asked, you know, when are we going to do some foundation stuff? When are we going to draw, you know, learn some perspective, whatever? And they told him, no, you just got to express yourself. That's what we're here to do, to let you know that it's safe to, and that's a huge problem. That's why, you know, someone brought up Prager, you know, that little skit that he did, you know, about this. And it's, I mean, I'm an illustrator, so I don't have that luxury anyway, you know, to get into the abstract stuff. And you know, also like someone like Picasso, I'm not really big on cubism, but I can respect Picasso because I know that he knows how to draw the figure. I know he understands the properties of light and value, and you know, but modern art, you know, it's just so lazy, and that's what really gets to me.
Yeah, a lot of people put a lot of bad, like the worst examples of modern art, down to just sort of a purely evil spirit. But I actually think, while some of it may be due to that, a lot of it is due to people who just are not naturally artists and suck at art, acknowledging that, and then saying, okay, if I suck at art, how can I actually make money? How can I actually become fascinated? And then think, okay, well, I'll lay out a sheet of paper on the floor and have a period over it, and I'll get in the news. And, you know, a lot of liberal intellectuals and feminists will say, wow, this is really inspiring. There is a kind of cynical element to it that's not just purely, I'm going to do something evil, I'm going to do something crazy and off the wall. It's more sort of, there is a lot of money involved in this, and the sad thing is, a hell of a lot of the worst stuff is not even commercial, it's state funded. It gets state funding, and they chase that thing by doing avant-garde university based stuff.
Why do you think black people are so good at art? I mean, it's not universal, but some very good forms of art have come from that community. It's undeniable. Jazz, rock, you can't really sweep that under the rug. Is it the rhythmic thing?
I kind of sweep it under the rug myself.
It's the rhythmic thing meeting the American culture. Jared Taylor even says black people have a good ear for rhythm. They pick it up faster than any other race, and thus sort of taken out of their native environment and introduced to certain Western instruments. I think they kind of created their own thing. And over time, it's of course changed. You know, jazz is very passé now. It's all about R&B and hip hop,
but a lot of that rap and hip hop stuff, the actual music and beats are made by white guys.
Yeah.
these days.
Funny
So,
thing.
so it's a real. It's not. I mean, there may be a black rapper up front, but you know, that kind of compositional artistry. I was assumed it was all them. I mean, because for me, I would have a hard time putting myself out. You know, just ranting some.
Ranting in rhyme.
Ideas over the top of some kind of fairly well crafted stuff, but that's okay. I mean, it seems, I don't know.
It's a stark difference. It's a stark difference between American black rap and mostly European rap, because you can see the difference in eloquence and in rhyme structure. It is more complex. White rap, even Eminem, is more coherent and more artful than many of his counterparts.
No, you're right, Gregory. I mean, like I can, even though I don't listen to it anymore, I can still see the merit in John Coltrane's "Love Supreme," for example. But for as an artist, what I can say is the most important ingredient is dedication, and the most important talent is your ability to, and we talk about this with race realism, your ability to defer gratification and control your impulses. Because if you can put off whatever, watching cat videos on YouTube, whatever, and sit down and draw circles for an hour, literally, page after page, then you're going to get better. You're going to get a lot better. And someone like Coltrane, someone like I don't know, Miles Davis, or Dexter Gordon, whatever, those guys sat down and maybe they did have, maybe they were outliers, intellectually, they had a little bit more creativity and ability to explore, but they sat down and they practiced, and that's the thing, that's the most important ingredient.
Yes.
There's less of that in the black community than there is in the white community, and this is why water always seeks its level, so you get it goes back to rap, it goes back to degenerate materialism and glorification of violence, and that's it. Meanwhile, there's still I don't know, someone like Arvo Part, I'm mispronouncing his name, I think, composer. These are still Europeans who are making music that could have been made in Hungary, or a monastery in France. I don't know. Still today.
And you look at the music, and they're also products of the era and what was going on within the community in that era. Jazz is very much. Well, what date would you say was the start of jazz?
I mean, jazz took off in the 30s, I guess, 1930s.
Yeah, the 20s, like with Scott Joplin.
Yeah, and when would you say it ended, really, as a sort of popular genre?
The late 60s.
Late 60s, okay. So what you're talking about there is really the kind of the Black America of segregation.
Yeah.
When the black community was actually much more prosperous than it ended up being, because there was quite a lot of entrepreneurship, because it was segregated, obviously, so that was a captive market. Blacks were just generally better off socially, economically, in all regards, really. And then after that, straight after the civil rights movement, straight after the end of segregation, and the introduction, of course, of the big sort of welfare, what was it called? Great Society, things like that, you had this massive decline in total living standards. And as such, and with the increase in crime as well, and child illegitimacy and other things, rap arose as this kind of response to that situation. So it does parrot the era in some ways. And you can sort of see this in white music. You can see it in the music of the 1960s and the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s in many ways. I think it's a little... The 2000s kind of blend into our current era in that they're really just sort of the era of mass market
in the
tripe.
Internet.
Yeah, exactly. But in music, it definitely does reflect eras and what's going on for groups of people.
Well, about rap music, it's very interesting. I once read a little bit about how rap started, and I mean, we all know about how sampling is a thing in rap, like originally just started because people would play records and just like sort of talk over them and do their own thing with them. But it's like it starts with music somebody else created, so it's kind of, I mean, not that it's completely devoid of creativity, but it does seem like there's less involved in the creative process when you do that.
Yeah, it's derivative.
Right, exactly.
And there's no instrumentation to it. It is a cappella for the most part.
What's interesting is that I remember, I think I saw this website where they track all the different like things that get sampled on rap songs. Like it's like an index of songs that have been sampled in rap music, and I remember reading that I think like some rapper like Lil Wayne or some guy like that, I don't know, but he sampled a song by Cho Young Pil, he's like a really well-known Korean singer who I'm a fan of actually, and it's just like some beat from one of his songs that he sampled, and I found that there's like 2 other rap songs that have used this thing, and I'm like, do they even know anything about this guy? He's like some guy who's like a superstar in Korea, who's like a legend, but do they know anything about his music, or did they just hear that beat and said, hey, yeah, let's use this? I mean, it's just kind of funny how like you have this like great musician, but he's just being used for his
Black people don't say hey. Black people don't say hey. They say hold up.
Hold up.
Yeah, that's vanity. You know, that's saying, oh, what can I do that, you know, is going to make me look cool, because no one, you know, it's like P. Diddy sampling freaking, what was it, Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, and you know, yeah, then you see him on Saturday Night Live with Jimmy Page. Yeah, it's like he doesn't really care about. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's largely vanity. You know, it's like what can I do? You know, and Lil Wayne, and I don't know any of his stuff, but you know, by the time he comes around, you're gonna have to, you know, cast a pretty wide net. You know, well past Led Zeppelin and Steely Dan or whatever to find something interesting that no one's done before. So that's my idea on that.
Yeah.
My idea is that the less you think, the more in tune you are with your natural rhythm and instincts. And dumb people do make good athletes, and it's not just a stereotype. Yeah. Smart people overthink everything. It's paralyzing. That's why smart people are usually bad with girls in their default state without training themselves to be good, because they overthink it. Oh, if I say this, well, maybe she'll think that. And that's in sports. That's even in fighting. You're supposed. I listened to The Nation of One, an alt-right podcast, and the host is an American soldier, a Christian one. I think he's Catholic, and he was talking about combat situations and how it's not like in the movies where you act all graceful and stuff. You just go blank and rely on your training. It's an automatism. It's like pedaling a bicycle. You don't have to think about it. And that's what fighting is like, and that's what many things in life are. You just rely on your basic instincts. You train those instincts up, you hone them in private, but when the time comes to put them in practice, your mind goes blank.
Yeah.
So that explains my lack of romantic success. I'm too smart.
Yeah, seriously, I'm not exaggerating, and I can see you're a very eloquent guy, so this may sound strange to you because you are used to thinking, and it's a very good feature, but in some things it is a disadvantage, believe me.
Well, I think smart people tend to be less content because they see problems that other people don't, that other people are they ignore and they're numb to, and thus it's very hard for them to be positive, and thus very hard for them to sort of gravitate socially in a normal way unless they can overcome that with some other strength that they have. So I think that's a very...
I can't hear you.
Yeah, I think Mark might have just muted himself.
I thought it was just me.
He's gone away.
Yeah,
somewhere.
I think Mark kind of trailed off. I don't know, maybe his internet cut out again, like what happened to me last time.
No.
You remember last time when I was talking, then I just trailed off, and my internet sort of crapped out on me for a moment there. So
until Mr. Citadel comes back to answer your question you first asked, yes, Europeans do have a closer bond to their roots, but they're kind of used to it, especially very white countries like Romania. You take it for granted, so you're very eager, or you don't care to give it up. You crave what you don't have. In this case, it's Western wealth, and you romanticize the West. So there is, you're right, we are closer knit, but there is a danger to lose what we have because we don't appreciate it.
Well, and that's why, you know, that's the duty. That's the duty of people like you, priests. You know, if there's an aristocracy, which of course there isn't, it's the duty of people like that to, you know, make sure that that maintains some degree of currency, and that and God helps in this. You know, if you have God in your life, you maintain a link between yourself, your predecessors, and your children.
I never understand why secular people are so anti-hierarchy, because God has mercy, nature doesn't. Nature is extremely hierarchical. So if you really do believe in evolution, and you analyze the way things are supposed to be, you should be crueler than the cruelest religious dictator.
Well, it's like Edward O. Wilson, the biologist, said, you know, and this is the guy that figured out that ants communicate with pheromones. You know, he said, you know, communism, it's a great idea, but not for this species. It's good for insects.
Yeah, exactly.
Very true.
Oh, yeah. Continue, Mr. Mark, where you left off. You trailed.
No. I got it across. I think you're right in that point about smarts generally too deficient in certain other areas. But this just goes to the point of hierarchy. People are differentiated to perform different functions and different tasks within a society. People aren't. You can't say to a child, you know, you are capable of doing anything, because they're likely not in their physiology, not in their psychology, not even in their kind of spiritual disposition. You know, that they're just not. They have a role that they're supposed to fulfill, and their life will be a question of to what extent do they fulfill that role, and do they succeed in getting the most out of themselves as possible.
I imagined having this discussion with my son, and I actually don't want to tell them you can do whatever you want. I'm going to explain to him that he has a safety net. So until he is under my roof and under my protection, he can try as many things as possible. So when he fails, if he fails, he has somewhere to land. And this will both encourage him to try new things without giving him the false expectation of I can be president.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just going to say, you know, there is that one thing out there for you that you are supposed to do, and it's your job to, in this very crazy world where that isn't very discernible, you know, we aren't given it from a young age. It's your job to kind of find it and to do it, and to do it to the best of your ability.
If it's between you, only God knows what's best for you, and it's your job to find it.
Yeah, it's interesting that this concept of telling kids, you know, you can be whatever you want to be, or you can do whatever you want. I mean, I know that's kind of a fairly recent phenomenon, because I remember John Derbyshire had an interesting piece where he talked about how he was talking about this game that's played in like classrooms or whatever, where they're trying to demonstrate how white privilege works or something, where they tell you to take one step forward or one step backwards if this has ever happened to you, and they're like, one of the questions is like, if you've ever been told that you could be whatever you want to be when you grow up, and he's like, me? And no, I was never told that. He's talking about how when he said like all these questions are biased toward late 20th century suburban white America. I mean, he's like, for a guy like he grew up in like working class family in England, so he's like, you know, nobody told me you can be whatever you want to be when you grow up. It was just like, no, here's your lot in life. You gotta make do with it.
You're probably going to be like a shopkeeper or something like that,
or a coal miner or something.
Yeah,
it's a very cruel thing to do. You know, I mean, as someone who, you know, I didn't get my you know, my university education until I didn't start until my 30s. It took me a while, and as someone who has taught in higher ed, I see this firsthand, and it's horrendous. You know, it's and when I say it's cruel, it's not just cruel for the people that you're telling that they can do anything. You know, I had one young black guy, and you know, I'm gonna do my best to keep from doxing myself, especially since I'm, you know, I'm in the belly of the beast. I'm in the cathedral. But he, throughout the whole semester, I was I was doing everything I could, you know, to get this kid to, and he showed up all the time. Nice kid, just to get him to understand the projects. And I tried, you know, I was speaking with my department head, trying to dumb it down, and I had to fail him. But it's also cruel to the kids who are bright, you know, the white kids, the Asian kids, because it's dumbed down, you know, for the sake of the people who are told you can be anything you want, and if you don't get there, it's the white man that's keeping you down. And it's awful, it's horrible. And someone has to empty the trash at the end of the day.
The ambiguity of the system, or the ambiguity of your potential or your potentiality, is to do with the whole sort of economic structure and what those expectations are of you, that most parents would like their children today. I'd say it's generally felt today, I think, among adults. Most parents say, I would like you to have a better life than I did. I would like you to be richer than me. It doesn't matter what you do. I just want you to earn more than I did in my lifetime so that you can have a better life. Whereas in the past, you know, you go back to the 1000s or whatever, if you worked as a blacksmith or a carpenter, what you were passing on to your children was, okay, my objective for you is that you are going to be a better carpenter than me, but you're going to be a carpenter because, you know, that's what I'm going to educate you to do. And it's going to be a lot in life, but your task is to do it better than I did. It's not about sort of the raw monetary concern or this very sort of material outlook. It's more about the beauty of a craft, and that is a link. But it was a link between generations. It wasn't just that you were raised by someone; it's that you inherited all of their, you know, their secrets, their way of doing things, and you refined it, and then you passed it on to your children. It's been completely lost today because you know, it's a vanishingly small number of people who end up actually doing what their parents did.
What I appreciate most about American culture, and this is one of the most positive things, is that they have this glorification of not the entrepreneur. I don't like that, but there is nobility in work, whatever it might be. So they do tend to glorify this. They do tend to put the worker on a pedestal, not like communists do. They do it in a very blind and they want to profit off this. But Americans do this right, in my opinion. Your guys.
Well, no, I would actually say that, you know, having lived in America for some time, America does not put workers on a pedestal at all. It puts entrepreneurs on a pedestal. In America, you get congratulated if you make a business, if you come up with a new idea. You don't really get congratulated if you work all your life in a steel mill or in a coal mine.
The media does promote this, because I've watched a lot of shows, and the common Joe, the blue collar worker, is always put in the favorable light, and he is shown as less educated. The perfect example of this was Archie Bunker. He was designed by a liberal, and the liberal wanted people to hate him, but people fell in love with him because there is something about that hardworking guy coming home to engrave children.
But that's in entertainment, and I'd say that's, you know, I don't know about Romanian media, but I would say that's certainly true in the UK. If you want to connect, you know, look, what's the most popular soap opera in the UK? It's something like EastEnders, which is a poor end of relatively poor end of London where people are working class. If you want to connect something like that, I remember the original Archie Bunker he wasn't meant to be popular. He was meant to be a sort of figure of ridicule. That was what they were sort of protesting, and people fell in love with him and liked this guy because he connected
they agreed with him,
with the common man. Yeah, they agreed with him more than, I can't remember the other. It was supposed to be in contrast to another show that was like a liberal woman, a liberated, and nobody liked that.
You think of Maude?
Yeah, Maude. That got cancelled because nobody connected with it. But I, you know, from listening to what Republicans and things say, there is this kind of, you're not necessarily achieving the American dream, so-called, come up with a big idea, unless you really raise yourself up. There's not, you know, there's not the institutionalized, at least, appreciation of people who just live a decent life. That's not the American dream. The American dream is changing things and making a name for yourself and putting your name on the world. Whereas I don't think that necessarily should be the case at all. The people, regular people, should be appreciated, not because they do great things, but because they do normal things and ordinary things, which are necessary to keep the society going.
You know, I remember, I think it was Sam Dixon had a speech. I saw a speech he gave where he was talking about in, I think, Germany, that they actually have special days for different types of workers. Like they have a special day where they honor hotel workers, special day where they argue different like blue collar professions. And he thinks that's a good system because it reminds people that, yeah, you're serving a role in society and you have a place here, even though you're not doing anything glorious. So, I mean, I don't know. I think he said it was Germany.
The very fact that they've had to introduce those kind of gimmicks tells you that people have lost appreciation for those roles, and so they've got to have a day. They're going to have a special day for it. You know, that shouldn't be the case. But it should be just the case that you generally appreciate people who work and generally appreciate their station in life, as long as they're doing their job well.
Well, it's the nobility of hierarchy, and it's you know, Gregory, what you're talking about, it's not so much, it's definitely not something that's glorified in the media, but I'll just give you an anecdotal example. You know, one of my last jobs, it wasn't in academia, and I worked with a guy who had a trade. You know, he worked in one part of the place where I worked, and we would talk. And this is when I was in grad school, and we'd talk about that. And you know, he's Joe Everyman. You know, he'd make fun of me. The guy drove like a '68 Camaro, and I liked him a lot. He was a great guy. But anyway, you know, he talked about his son, and he was telling me. He said, you know, he was hearing at school like, oh, you should go to college. You should go to college, and he's just like, what the fuck are they talking about? He should go to college. You know, he's too good to do what I do. And that's what ended up happening. You know, he sent his kid to trade school, and those are still around. And this kid, you know, got out of his trade high school, got a job doing machining at a gun plant, a place that makes guns. And he started at, I think it was $37,000, $38,000 a year, you know, which is a lot more than, you know, a graduate student, you know, with their master's in women's studies can ever hope to make, you know. So it is there. It is there, but it's subdued, and you have, and these are the people that elected Trump, you know, the people like that you know, they see that nobility, you know, they accept the hierarchy, and they're okay with it. You know, it's like I said, they might make fun of people who are intellectual or whatever, but they're decent people.
In an ideal society, there would be a balance. This harkens back to a previous point I made. The more intellectual you are, you get proficient in your field of study, but you get detached from the basic reality, the physical reality in which we live in. So you do need the workers do supply this anchoring point to reality that society needs, while they push it forward in politics and in other fields. In an ideal society, these two would be in balance and working in synchronicity. But our current system just pits them against each other. So we have election cycles where 8 years we're right wing and go super gay left. No middle.
A true elite has an appreciation and a love of the rungs of the hierarchy that even are below him. A symptom of the modern era is that our elite hate those people, and that was embodied in the Clinton campaign. That they sneered at working people, they disliked. That's why Trump won the Rust Belt, is because this campaign was so arrogant as it pertained to working class white people. And yeah, it's just demonstrable of the situation we have now, in which the elite are really a faux elite. They're not elite at all. These are the worst elements of society who have actually sort of bubbled to the top. And when I say the worst elements, I don't mean the elements that are at the bottom. I mean the elements who are by their very nature immoral and who would have been sort of outcasts. They wouldn't even been have considered part of the caste system. They would have been the untouchables because of their kind of noxious the state that the very spiritual outlook is in, and that defines the modern left.
How does British hierarchy fit into this? Because I was watching a history channel, Lindy Page, and he had a video about British officers not ducking. So they were filming a World War II movie, and they actually had the British officer there, and he said, "No, we don't duck. We just stroll out of respect and to keep the men calm." So is that part of the reason? Of course, you're an island, but part of the reason, I assume, is that British hierarchy had regard for its lower elements. Can that be a factor?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we use higher and lower, we're using them in relative terms. So hierarchy is arranged as this kind of function, but it's not necessarily a statement of value. And I'd compare it to look at the Titanic. When the Titanic went down, it was women and children into the lifeboats. Now, did that mean that men were lower in the hierarchy than women and children because they died while they lived? No, it was, even though it was because they were higher that they were willing to sacrifice themselves at that point to save elements that had other qualities that made them more valuable, more worth saving, in that the children could live long lives and the women could have more children, and that the captain had to go down with his ship, etc. That's just another kind of example of that. Yeah, I definitely think that your example of the British officers is true to that. And then it's also for morale. It's for morale as well,
Just like the evolution fallacy, many people, when they see two creatures, for example, you compare a dog to a worm, the natural impulse for everyone would be to say that the dog is more evolved than the worm, but that's not true, because the test of evolution is that does it survive and proliferate today? So if you analyze its complexity, yes, it's more complex, but both are equally evolved. And both classes of society serve their purpose equally well. None is more, as you said just before.
They're specialized for different functions. A worm will not do very well on a leash, and a dog won't do very well if you bury it.
Yeah. So that's even some far fringes of the far right would say that blacks aren't as evolved as whites. No, they evolved perfectly for their environment.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not less evolved. If a creature dies out, then it fails the evolution test. Then you can say that it's not evolved.
And in that respect, we are failing on a much grander scale than they are.
Unless it's global warming, and then they deserve it.
Oh, yeah, the mythical global warming, which our new president, by the way, says is a conspiracy from the Chinese.
Yes, the Chinese.
Those sneaky Chinese.
Does that mean that he acknowledges it, that it's real?
No, he doesn't believe in it.
Okay, good.
I believe that the truth challenge of the far right is continental drift, because the continents will unite once again. So what do you do? How do you keep people away then?
We need to weaponize our coasts, for when we're getting close to Africa.
You kind of have to put a rubber buffer around those coasts, so when they bang into each other, they bounce apart again.
Well, they might make a mountain. They might make a mountain barrier anyway.
Speaking of,
it would.
Insta-wall.
What do you guys think of speaking of the content of the whole Calexic thing? Is it just all bluff, or is it something that might really happen?
You're talking about the Cal exit, talking about California
exiting the Union. Yeah,
maybe it'll be annexed by Mexico, but no, it's not going to secede.
Republica del Norte.
Although, God, Trump should stop crying out loud. If it's seceded, he couldn't lose the next election.
Yeah.
Well, they were saying on the Daily Show, and this is actually a good point. They're like, you know what? Let them, because they're gonna fail. Then we'll take it away from them, kick them out, and we'll have it again.
There are
Yeah.
a few thousand millionaires surrounded by a few tens of millions of POC. They're going to get devoured. It will be Brazil on crack.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Northern California has talked about seceding before, like, because I guess in Northern California it's a lot more white, it's a bit more conservative, and so they don't like all the.
It's not that much more conservative. It's actually, I think it's more liberal than Southern California.
Yeah. You have Orange County in the south.
The California divide
I
is
grew
more
up in
seemingly east and west. It's like the west is all along the coast, and then the east is actually pretty conservative. It's the big sort of less populated counties.
You mean like the more inland parts of it?
Yeah, more inland.
That's true. Actually, Orange County was a pretty conservative county for a while. I'm not sure if it still is. I think it's like drifting because a lot of tech companies are now moving to Orange County, and you know what that means.
It's the same story with Washington and Oregon.
Signal left, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what legal mechanisms are, available for this sort of thing. But, again, like the mass outbreak of chimp outs right now, I really hope that the left and, our fascinating, exotic exemplars of diversity in this country, I hope they just double down. I really do. Push it harder.
Agree.
And
yeah.
It's just it can only be to our advantage. And again, in two ways. Preparing. Making more whites understand. This is real. You better get ready. And then resulting in us being ready when it happens.
And by the way, making more whites. Period.
Yes.
Just making more of them. Well, on that note, guys, I've got to go to bed. It's quite late here. So
God bless, Mark.
Thanks for joining, Mark. It's always good to have you.
Absolutely.
Good night, Mark. Sleep well.
Been a pleasure.
All right. Well,
I'm still enjoying the triggering myself.
Yeah.
I feel it. Can you guys feel the trigger?
I mostly celebrated. I mostly celebrated the Trump victory by going trolling on Twitter and just like laughing at the liberal tears.
I took a lot of screenshots of my my Facebook timeline, and I keep it. I'm pretty pretty tame on Facebook because of where I work and but it was just it was just wonderful. It was a joy. Like I said, word of the week or year is Schadenfreude.
Guys, you have no idea how much money was spent in Romania to counter-signal Trump. Basically, our entire media railed him. The people don't even know him, and they spent so much money. I don't know. A Romanian YouTuber has this theory that they do it for internet support, so they can trigger people and they'll go online, create a backlash, a sort of counter alt-right. An artificial
this is happening in Romania, even though it's probably relatively based.
Yes, our news media has counter-signaled Trump a lot. It's not like you, so nobody, I don't think someone called him an open racist or orange Hitler or something, but they always put him in a very, very negative light. They don't explain his policies. They don't explain the reasons. They spend a lot of money. Airtime is expensive, even here, and they do it.
Well, I mean, I think the media cathedral really does extend all over the world. I mean, in my own experience, like I remember when Obama was running for president, they're showing how like support of the candidates all throughout the world, and like Obama was winning all of them. So it's like, but like, do these people really know anything about Obama? Do they really? I mean, in countries that don't even speak English, like, what do they really know except what their media tells them?
I have a coworker, and we were arguing this about today. She said, "You know who I really liked? Obama." And I asked her why. What was the policy that you liked? And she couldn't tell me. She was going with your gut. He's a charismatic black guy. He was handsome when he ran the first time, and that's all she needs.
Well, what was different about Obama was that, like, when he was first running, he was a little bit more of a populist candidate. Like, he was campaigning in the heartland, and he won a lot of votes from Republicans in the heartland.
Yes,
While
but
Hillary,
he is the first. He is the first. Sorry for interrupting you. He is the first alt-right president because he married a tranny. That's very alt-right.
Wow.
This hangout was worth.
Yeah, but well, I mean, contrast that to Hillary. Hillary's was a total elitist. Like, she thought the heartland was complete flyover country. She thought everything that wasn't New York or LA was flyover country, and it really.
What I found interesting when I was looking at the map on the election night, we kind of zoom into it, and this article, this kind of leftist trying to come to terms with why half America went crazy or some stupid way they worded the article, that cracked article I posted in the chat there, was basically it, and they point this out. This is rural versus urban. I mean, if you zoom in on the maps, by and large, even in pretty much any blue state, the blue actual victories are in high population areas, but they're all in the urban areas. And then pretty much anywhere that's rural was red. Like, I mean, that's a rough, just visual, but it was quite something to see. And this article seems to confirm that. So you have this, and I remember her I couldn't believe that people, I guess she kind of appealed to kind of sycophants, because she was always kind of smug, even to the people she was supposedly talking to. There was nothing warm or endearing about her. She always just seemed like she thought she was, just entitled to be there. And there,
so you might be asking yourself, why am I not up by 50 points?
That's what I was just thinking.
Yes, she has like such a smug. Yeah, she has such a smug attitude and always has that smug smile on her face. Like, I just can't stand her at all. Even if, like, I agreed with all of her policies, I still would vote against her because I can't stand her as a person.
And again, when you remove hierarchy, when you remove the natural order of things, and even if it's just a delusion, even if you know it's a delusion, I might say, you can't. It's just too much cognitive dissonance when okay, we're all equal, but these people, they don't get it, they don't believe me, so I can disregard them.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Another part of it is the mass secularization of society. When there's nothing. And this is why we react against immigration, against diversity, because when you're putting more stock in nihilistic policies than you are with policies that bind the people together, this is what you're going to get. And that's why, I mentioned in one of our hangouts in the summer, I believe, towards the end of my grad school experience, I ended up chatting with a friend of mine who I like a lot, and she liked me, and I challenged something about Black Lives Matter, maybe feminism. I can't remember what it was, but she really broke down because there's that cognitive dissonance. I'm surrounded by these people who never challenge my my wisdom, my my prejudice, and they just don't get it, and that's why you're seeing these meltdowns.
Yeah,
I see that on Twitter too. Like, if you just you might be having a regular conversation with somebody, but as soon as you start challenging things like all races being equal, they suddenly just can't handle it and they have to leave.
It's emotion, yeah. It's emotion rather than intellect.
Right.
America didn't. Well, it did, but America didn't really remove hierarchy. The problem is it banned it. Because with freedom of association, that would mitigate some of the challenges. Just look at the Mormon Church, for example. The entire weight and might of the American government fell upon them, and yet have some of the most conservative and hierarchical structures that can be found on that continent. The problem is that now, lately, hierarchies are banned. This is against freedom of association, because you guys could band together with all of the other alt-right people, let's say an area, and create a white hate. Then comes Obama with his legislation forcing you, I repeat, forcing you to take in POCs. So it's not the problem that hierarchy was discouraged. It was literally banned.
Yeah, and like when I had a friend when I was in high school, like he was he was a racially mixed guy, and I mean he was a good guy, don't get me wrong, but he was constantly like trying to talk about like how my people, the Armenians, have too much pride in their race, how like they, he didn't like how they had a strong in-group preference. It kind of rubbed him the wrong way.
You're
And,
Armenian?
Yes, I'm Armenian, and it's like for a long time really messed me up, and it took me a while to get over that garbage.
My condolences for your people, sir, and I truly mean that.
Yeah, yeah, I know you do. It's like you have to truly mean it because you're Romanian.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yes, and you lacked the justice of having your own impaler.
Oh yeah. Hopefully one day.
Yeah, one day it will.
Yeah.
But today, even someone like me, I'm not Romanian. I don't have. I've known some Armenian people, but there are people like me, like Ian, William, etc., who get it. We might not know the details, but we understand being dispossessed, whether that's being dispossessed of your land, your heritage,
identity.
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that guy didn't get it. That guy that you were talking about, Sam. And whether it's because he's biracial, whatever it is, it's probably a combination of that and the environment he was brought up in. Of course he doesn't get it. And we do.
Yeah. I'm just like I'm just saying it not because like I have like a chip on my shoulder or whatever. It's sort of like like the last sorry, I'm about to go off on a tangent.
You're welcome to do so.
Yeah, it's sort of like there's this thing like as far as Christianity goes, there's it's evangelicalism is pretty much like liberalism light. I mean, I'm still within evangelicalism, but like I've been strongly considering a move towards like the East or towards Rome, and so far like I haven't been doing enough research. But
go to Latin Mass.
It isn't about evangelicalism, because I was just telling the guys when I first met them that evangelicals are the most conservative in Romania.
Yeah, they are.
Yes,
yeah.
They are. So it is a sort of an area thing. But to the other point at hand, zero Romanians are suffering from this crap now. Everything that red pills and triggers me is happening to you guys. It's not about happening to Romanians. And with the risk of sounding too Richard Spencer, I do feel a brotherhood with all Christians first and whites second. You are my brother, and it genuinely hurts my soul to see you go through that. I can only imagine the pain of the beautiful American culture that I admire to be trampled, and it's not mine, and it hurts me. Seriously.
Yeah, and it hurts me the same way too, because like my family came over here to escape Muslim persecution, especially in Turkey, and now like this country is becoming more like Turkey. It's becoming hostile to Christianity. They're trying to tear down every cultural remnant of Christendom that's left in this country, and they're attacking white people, and it's just nuts, you know. Like,
We
good
have
thing
one
that,
about- Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go on, go on, go on.
it's I mean, good thing Trump got elected, since he'll slow this crap down by at least 4 years, hopefully 8. But we know eventually that the next Democrat to get into office will make Hillary look like Reagan.
We have an inbuilt advantage as Christians. Our Lord and Savior chose to put himself in a position where he was persecuted, not
Yeah.
because, like many alt-right people say, but because he knew that persecution will be faced in the present under the Romans by his time, and in the future, and who knows how many. So persecution is a central point of our religion, and not that we revel in it, but by the fact that our own God is, for example, Muslims feel insulted. They feel insulted that we say God had a human body, that he had an anus, he used to sweat. That is demeaning to them. But to us, it shows a sign of endearment that the creator of the universe lowered himself to our level and suffered not as a king, as a flesh and blood God king, but as the lowest of the low, a lowly carpenter that suffered tremendously.
And it's
Right.
also what gives us hope. You know, I mean, and he said, you know, I will be with you till the end of time, you know, wherever 2 or more you gather. And we have hope. And this is something I was thinking of with, you know, these progressive drones just freaking out. They have no hope. You know, their entire hope, their entire sense of well-being, of personal fulfillment, it's wrapped up in this ephemeral, ultimately empty and transitory, you know, secular existence. And we have the hope, you know, which is why we got through, why we've gotten through so many different things throughout the centuries, and we always have that hope, and it comes from, like you're both mentioning, you know, the corporeal manifestation of Christ and his suffering, and you know, not to mention the sacrifice, but we will always have that hope. And I would recommend, Sam, check out a Latin Mass in your area if you can, because it doesn't get more conservative than that. That's what I do, and these people are people you could have run into in you know, 14th, 15th century Spain. They're essentially the same.
Yeah.
Check it out.
When I was a Marxist, it basically felt like a mad dash towards the finish line. Basically, you accept your mortality, but you also think that this is it. So you try to
Yep.
become a hedonist. It's
Yeah.
you come to with the territory. So you try to cram in as many positive and pleasurable experiences as humanly possible, and that can be wearing because the reward circuits of the brain get used, they get desensitized, so you're chasing bigger and bigger thrills.
And that's what Satan likes.
Yes, exactly. So it's
what did Thomas Aquinas say? You know, we seek, if we remove God, you know, we have that hole, and what do we fill it with? We fill it with power, pleasure, wealth, and esteem, and that's what Marxists are after. You know, and that's all they have, and that's, you know, that's ultimately that's unfulfilling, and it destroys a society.
Yeah.
I nearly teared up when I wasn't expecting it, but when I was watching the vice presidential debate and the issue of abortion came up, and when Mike Pence said, quoted the Bible when God says that I knew you in your mother's womb,
Yep.
and that it came out of nowhere. I was playing a game, barely paying attention, but that hit home so hard because we're not alone. We have each other. There was never a point on this earth when there was one Christian. We were 12 and then we multiplied. We'll have each other. It's no matter how few we are, and then we always have Christ, even if we're, as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will come out the other side, believe me.
Yeah, pretty much God will preserve his elect.
Yes, and that gives us solace and gives us more happiness. I have less fun. I have notably less fun. I sometimes miss my old life like I would miss an amputated limb. However, I know there's no turning back.
Well, it's like C.S. Lewis said, you know, if you're looking for a religion that that makes you feel good, you know, you should stay away from Christianity. And it's not saying that, you know, that it's not a pejorative. It's you know, if you want the easy way, you know, you know, and it's in the Bible. You know, the path is straight and narrow. You know, it's not easy. It's not easy to stay on it, and that's what you're referring to. I'm assuming, Gregory.
Yes. I'm in my. I agree with everything you said, but I'm in my honeymoon period right now. I recently came back to Christ, so I honestly think this is gonna sound cheesy as fuck. I feel like I'm in love. Food tastes better. I feel like I have a purpose. I wake up in the morning with a sense of guidance. It's the honeymoon period when the sin starts kicking in and I start feeling guilty. It will be hard, but right now I'm in cloud nine.
Yeah,
I know the feeling. I know the feeling.
I'm high on Christ.
Yeah. Speaking of like the Latin Mass, I was looking more into Eastern Orthodoxy because it's like more of my ethnic religion. But the thing I'm confused about is that Armenians are Oriental Orthodox, so they're not even in communion with Constantinople.
That's not a problem. Listen, you should choose what feels, and I don't mean to sound like a liberal, but you should choose what feels right for you because you're obviously called by God. So go where the calling takes you. If it's not, first of all, I have this code to my life. Does it feel good? Yes or no? Does it feel good because it's selfish? Yes or no? These two questions will get you through life. So if it feels good and it's not because it's selfish, then you should go with it. Because calibration, this internal consciousness. It's not like you're choosing to be choosing another religion because they allow you to smoke weed or something.
Do you have any religious Armenian people around you, Sam?
Yes.
Area?
They're mainly evangelical Christians. They're good people, pretty solid.
No Orthodox churches in the area that Armenians go to?
Yeah, there are, but from my personal experience, it's the Armenians that are involved in Orthodoxy are more of the secular types, or they're very old people.
Yeah, it's just tradition.
Actually, like I think right now, like the Armenian Orthodox churches is all full of old people.
Well, that's that is how it is in a lot of the traditional churches. But again, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but at traditional Catholic Latin masses, you do see younger people, like a bunch, and you see a lot of families with lots of kids. When I came back to the church, I was an atheist for a long time, and I came back to, you know, the Novus Ordo Mass. That was the first thing I noticed. I'm like, all these people are old. You know, the church is in decline. You know, I joined the Knights of Columbus. It was the same thing. You know, old guys, and the traditional Catholics in their community, it's very vibrant. It's very much alive. It's very hopeful. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's also like I was trying to look for apologetic works defending like the Apocrypha. Well, you guys don't call it the Apocrypha, but you know what I mean. It's all like I oftentimes have to depend on Catholic apologetics to get something that's close to like a Orthodox apologetics, because they're not. Orthodox are very weak on apologetics.
They're unapologetic. That's the point.
Yeah.
Ian, are you in Greek Orthodox? Do I remember that correctly? Did Ian leave?
I don't know.
He's muted.
No, sorry. I had just gotten up for a second, and I was just coming back when you talked to me.
He's reporting to the GIDF.
No, I had to blow my nose actually.
So it's like
He's the front man and the mole in one.
yeah. I'll probably stay within Protestantism for a while, especially within the Reformed faith, and like do some research to understand things. Like I know that the Catholic Church is traditionally very strong on theology and apologetics, and I'm afraid if I move towards the east, it would be this very anti-intellectual, mystical thing.
It
You know,
is.
where,
It is.
yeah, yeah, and it's kind of like, I mean, I like people who are like Thomas Aquinas and you know, all the Protestant and Catholic apologists. You know how they would go deep into theology.
Yeah, you can't beat St. Thomas Aquinas.
I appreciate.
You can't be St. Thomas Aquinas in Constantinople.
No, he said you can't beat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can't beat him. The Summa Theologica. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I am ambivalent towards this situation because I have the best of both worlds. Basically, I appreciate, cherish, and bathe in the mysticism of Orthodox people because it's less work for me. When I'm talking to people from my own country, they see these things as self-evident truths. I don't have to convince them of them.
Yeah.
However, I am a very scientifically oriented person. I've studied science all my life, and for me, as a person, I have to explain this to myself. I believe in evolution. I can't just square the circle by saying Deus vult, God wills it. I have to explain this. So that's why I was born in a Protestant family, but I am attracted to Protestantism because it allows me the space I need to spread my wings intellectually.
Yeah.
See, and to get to an alt-right point, and this is in my disadvantage, but the truth is the truth, we're lower IQ than Westerners. So these mystical explanations, I'm not saying they're wrong, because they're not, but they suffice for IQs. My average IQ in my country is 94. I don't know if it's just native Romanian, it's because we have gypsies and they have a 60 IQ average, less than Aboriginals.
Yeah.
And they spin and lower the entire medium. However, Bulgarians who are just to the south of us also have 94 IQs. So my people are literally dumber than your people, and it works here. But if you're a bit smart, I would recommend Catholicism. Well, Mr. Mark is an exception, of course. He's brilliant, and he fits in with this. But in general, if you're smarter, choose Protestantism or Catholicism.
Yeah, I was considering Lutheranism, but it's like a very ethnic religion full of like Northern Europeans, and it's also been pretty cooked for the last couple centuries.
Super paused, yeah.
Yeah, especially the Church of Sweden.
Yeah.
And this is my concern with any Protestantism, and I'm not getting down on any of it whatsoever. I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I would in a different format, but not this one. But my issue is that it is very vulnerable to secularism by, just from the very beginning, where you start off in a rupture, in a split. It kind of sets a precedent, where whatever, whether it's Baptist, Presbyterian, whatever, it's like, okay, we don't agree with them, maybe it's not so bad for someone who's gay to come, and maybe they don't get to do all this stuff that and I'm generalizing, of course, but
Yeah.
this is my concern, you know, that because this is, and this is why when I go to mass, you know, after the service is over and we're talking in the hallway, and it's generally women talking to women, men talking to men. We do believe in gender roles, but you know, you'll hear us complaining about the Pope. You know, we're not bad mouthing him and calling him names, but because we're concerned about any sort of reconciliation with the secular world, with modernism, and that's what I worry about. And you know, C.S. Lewis called it Christianity and water. You know, when you start to water it down, it like Gregory was saying, that the feeling that you have, Gregory, you know, that's beautiful. That's transformative and transcendent, and it shouldn't. That comes from a purity, you know, and that's how it should be.
I understand, but God, basically, not all people are created equal, and that's not just because of IQ. Some people are more devout than others. So for a person like me, please imagine a dome, and on one side of the dome you have the faithful, and on the other side you have the doubting. Protestantism is a crack in that dome. It's so ambiguous that the bad can get in, but also some people can save themselves through that. Because for a person like me who believes in science, orthodoxy is in many ways off the table because it doesn't accept evolution, and I know evolution is true. It's provable. So
Yeah.
The Orthodox Church actually rejects evolution?
yeah, at least in Romania.
Yeah, you make me want to become Orthodox then, because I totally reject evolution. I mean, I don't care what people say, but it's, I mean, I believe in the Earth was created in 6 literal days. So like, I can't accept like these like interpretations like old Earth creationism and theistic evolution. I mean,
I just talked to the guys about this. Their Christianity is not anti-nature. So if tomorrow we discover, for example, blue unicorns on the bottom of the ocean, okay, then God must have made them. You can't really hold your Bible against obvious discoveries and say, no, my Bible says no. If the thing exists, it must have been made by God because it exists. This is a self-evident truth. So if evolution is true, you cannot deny it, because first, your allegiance as a Christian is towards the truth, and it's provable. That's why you can reject it and you won't go to hell for it. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. In fact,
We're kind of missing the point. The point is that there's dogma. There's dogma in the Catholic Church, and I personally believe in evolution. I'm pretty big on science too, and officially, well, not even officially, but you know, Pope John Paul said in the 70s or early 80s, I can't remember, that there's no inherent conflict between evolution and God imbuing man with a soul. But you know, that being said, a lot of people I do attend mass with do find it heretical, and a lot of priests do as well. But what it comes down to is dogma, and the dogma is what I'm talking about. The dogma is what keeps, and as far as I know, there isn't any inerrant dogma that precludes us believing in evolution, but the dogma does keep us from accepting abortion, accepting gay marriage, and that's my point with.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, there's I mean, science came from the church.
Yeah.
It's and you know, the thing is, all three of us could be, just for a thought experiment, you know, we could all be traditional Catholics and we could all have these different views and we would still be in communion with the church. You know, it's just when you start questioning, when you say, well, you know, maybe other people can be saved, you know, then you're kind of going against the dogma. So that's my point.
Yes, yes, of course. The first, if you look at the Ten Commandments, and again that kite, Dennis Prager, he did a series about the Ten Commandments, and he he took them one by one, and in the episode about thou shalt not take thy Lord names in vain. I'm trying to remember the King James version. The problem is people usually interpret that as don't swear, don't cuss, don't bring God into things that don't concern them, don't mock the name of God. But it goes deeper than that. And the commandment is actually more profound than that. It's about
You're on the second commandment, just so you know.
yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's
Otherwise?
different in the East and the West.
First commandment, I'm pretty sure it's universal. Is I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the first commandment universally.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I was
And
referring to
Protestants also have like a different Ten Commandments from the Roman Catholics too.
And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
no
it's
problem.
so like if we're Protestants, it's the third commandment for us because the second commandment's thou shalt not make graven images.
Yes, yes, yeah, you're right. We do get taught that. But my point was this: that commandment is not so easy as it seems because it is about dragging God's name through the mud. And you do that by committing evil in the name of God, and you also do that by defaming God, by pushing other people away. You act in God's name, and you actually commit a sin. That's a very grave problem. So if back to York, you say, oh, maybe God allows these people to be saved, for example, faggots. That's you using the name of God to justify a grave sin. So that's direct contradiction with the commandment. Did I express myself right? Did you understand what I was meaning?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so claiming that God would want it to be, that's why you can't question this dogma you're talking about. You can't Jew God and say, oh, maybe God meant that, and include gay people or disband marriage or something like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of presumptuous to like say that. I mean, you're pretty much saying that God doesn't know how to express himself in writing. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you do a better job of talking for him than he does for himself.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So this is what I like about the Catholic Church is there are certain dogma that are simply inarguable, and it just I mean, this is kind of a rough, crude analogy, but it's like you have kids, you and in your head, or maybe when they get older, you talk about it with them. You have certain transgressions that if they commit them, there's no question. There's got to be certain consequences. There are other ones where this is what is the best thing to do. Ideally, this is how we want to have it, but there's a little bit of room for mistakes or whatever. And then there's other stuff that you can maybe it's the end of the day, you've been working all day, you don't feel like dealing with it, and you can let it go. So it's kind of like that. That's and I think that's healthy. You have it's clear. It's like this cannot happen, or else it's like if I put on some $500 Nike basketball shoes and really baggy shorts and a headband, I'm not a basketball player. I look like one, but I'm not. And it's because I'm not following all the rules, and it's kind of like that, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Well, what can I say? The
Rules are good.
The problem with my religion, you're right to underline that, because when you liberalize the Bible, you give it to everyone, you democratize it. You can get people like me who are devout and conservative, but you can also get snake handlers or people who have gay priests and something like that. So there is a volatility to Protestantism it lacks rigidity, and that is a problem for the masses. But it happens to be the thing that saves my soul, so I can't really complain about it. You can complain because you're from a higher point of standing on this discussion.
It's
You
still
are
good.
right.
It's still good. It's like saying, oh, you know, that guy came to the alt-right because he was listening to that degenerate Milo Yiannopoulos. It's still good. You know, I mean, and I'm not comparing your religion to Milo Yiannopoulos.
I did listen to Milo. I did.
Yeah.
I went for all the stages of conservatism, including
Same
Neil.
here. Same here.
Same here too.
So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's, you know, and on the flip side of this, it should also be, and this is a misconception people have about the Catholic Church, and I'm guessing the Orthodox churches as well. Hey, LUE-YEE. But, you know, the people think that the Catholic Church sees itself as absolutely inerrant. Everything we do is good, which clearly wasn't the case, which is why, you know, Luther nailed his theses to the door. You know, the thing is, it's run by men. There are going to be mistakes. I mean, we you know, you look at Pope Francis, you look at, you know, all of the bishops. So there's going to be corruption. It's run by men, but the dogma does not change. It never changes.
Sorry, I see a very good analogy between the Catholic Church and the healthcare system. There is room in this world for private initiative, and that is what Protestantism represents, and that's why it catches on with so many capitalists. However, in certain issues, private initiative has to be cast aside for the sake of organization, rigidity, and strength in members. For example, the Protestant Church couldn't have saved Europe from Muslims. We needed you guys. We acted.
Or
So,
Darian heresy.
Government is shit in many regards, but I agree with liberals that healthcare shouldn't be a profit-making margin, and we can't afford to experiment too much with such a vital component of society.
Right.
I mean, not if you understand. Do you get my analogy? Do you know what I'm trying to say? So we do need the Catholic Church, who can have flaws, and it has, because it's big. By the virtue of its size, it will fail in many regards. However, its monolithic strength, we need it. It's safe.
And it's the bride of Christ, you know. And it's his body. He's the head. But, you know, I mean, the failures inherent in a government-run system are analogous to you know, a Protestant church that, say, allows, you know, gay bishops or whatever. You know, it's when you go against the nature of God. You know, the nature of you know, applying that to healthcare. You know, when you go against, say, the ability for insurance companies to compete over state lines, you're going against the nature of what makes sense about, you know, what is best. And therefore, yeah, you end up, and that's the idea. You know, you want to end up with government healthcare. So, I mean, it's a, you know, it.
So are you guys in favor or against government healthcare? I'm confused.
No, I'm in
against it.
favor. I'm in favor as a baseline, because it wouldn't work. Private healthcare wouldn't work in Romania, where people live out a month out of $50. How would you get treated? You would.
Yeah. It's going to be different everywhere you go.
Yeah. Not for America. America is very urbanized. Even your rural areas are basically cities. So it's very different for my people. You can't put a sheep herder with a $5,000 bill, medical bill. He won't have to pay it. So we can't neglect that. For America, of course, I agree with free market.
But you know,
that's. Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry if I'm talking over you.
No,
that America, like in the old days, everybody had a job, and everybody's job gave them health care. And now that's like those days are long gone. Most companies don't even offer health care anymore. Most people are not full-time employees anymore. They're either part-time contract for 6 months at most, and it's just becoming more of a gig economy. And the more becomes that way, the more necessary it will be for like there to be a nationalized healthcare system.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well, and that would disappear if we had a homogenous population. If we had a population that was mostly white, you know, I'd say it would be good to have some Asians in our population as well. You know, a certain number. But if we had that, you know,
keep them away from me. I love their women too much. I like their girls too much. I would end the Romanian race.
Yeah, my girl's Asian. But anyway, the thing is, you would have, it would be okay to have a certain, you know, kind of what you're getting around to, Sam. It would be okay to have like, say you can't get health insurance, say you got a job, say you don't have a job, whatever. It would be okay because you would have a homogenized population. We're all in it together. We're all unified, and then that would make a little bit more sense.
right.
So it's a difference. You know, there's a lot going on right now that really kind of there are a lot of factors at play.
So, guys, I have to go because tomorrow I have work. But before I go, I want to indulge in a tradition I used to have before I went heathen. My church group, my pastor encouraged that during our Bible studies and before we pray, we write down a thought of the day, what was going through our mind in that specific day. So I written a few lines. Can I read them and then fuck off?
Yeah,
Sure.
Okay.
So, today's thought of the day comes in the form of a recommendation, a song, a Christian hymn called How Can I Keep From Singing? It's easy to forget that as Christians, we have access to an emotion that nobody else can be graced with. It is both exclusive, yet universally attainable. Our joy, our bliss, does not come from milking the mind's reward circuit or tricking them with substance or vice. Our happiness comes from a soul that feels the divine warmth of its creator. He humbled himself and he wore flesh so that one day we will be able to share ours. In this knowledge, I find the solace that gets me through the coldness of the neon-lit dystopia and helps me to survive a world where we replace our wooden cross with plastic idols and secular constitutions. Be it lion's jaws, mockery's sting, or secularism's exclusion, we carry our cross with eternity's blissful promise. His love, Christian birthright, and considering that, how can I keep from singing? To quote the song, my life flows on through endless song, above earth's lamentations. I hear the sweet, though far off hymn that hails in ocean. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It finds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Amen.
Amen.
So,
Thank you, Gregory.
Amen.
listen to the song from Celtic Woman, How Can I Keep From Singing? It's one of my favorites. That being said, I bid you farewell, my brothers, and I hope to find you in good health next time.
God bless you, Gregory.
Yes, thanks.
God
Thanks for
bless.
joining, Gregory. Have a good one. I haven't heard much from LUE-YEE yet. How are you doing, LUE-YEE?
Doing all right, thanks. How are you?
Okay. Feeling good about the Trump victory, you know? We were talking about that earlier. That's just a new stage now.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I've been a bit of trouble on Facebook with my normie friends.
Oh yeah, I saw that. And what you posted wasn't like it wasn't even that edgy. It was like just like middle country, you know, American conservatism. There was nothing offensive of it at all, and all your Canadian friends were just like getting triggered.
Oh yeah, they were, especially two women. They just went right at me. I immediately was accused of racism, being a white privilege, everything, all just within.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, there was no responding, and I thought, this is not what I feel like doing on my Facebook page. So I wrote a kind of burn. I kind of burnt them back a bit by saying something like, well, I'm just not going to do this on my Facebook page. And I believe that you hold your just in general said out. I believe you hold your political views in with good intent, and I hope you understand that I hold mine also in good intent.
Right.
That's never good enough.
Yeah, it's
Never good enough.
it's like they
No,
cannot
I mean, this one
believe
woman
that.
is fully triggered.
Yeah.
No, I
Was
mean
that-
it's like the hey, all right, let's have an honest conversation, and it's like, you know, if one of you guys said that to me or I said it to you, you know, we would understand that for what it is. It's like, okay, yeah, let's have an honest conversation, which means that there might be
You
something
can hold
said
each other
that's
to account.
not pleasant, you know, but yeah, with you know, people like this that you're talking about, William, it's probably more you know, you listen to me talking and shut up.
This is my first
Yeah.
time to ever get actually no platformed. Essentially, is what it was. I was being no platformed. I was being called out for being a massive disappointment for having, because she understood me as being something that I wasn't, because I'm nice and I'm a good person
Yep.
and I'm generous. So for her, that means I must be a liberal or a progressive. Like, that's
Yeah.
just her understanding. I've known her for years, like probably almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And but I've been through lots of, you know, phases in my life, but I've never been that kind of prog thing. Like, never. Not
Mhm.
but they don't, yeah, they just, you know, but you know, if the subject of abortion came up or something, I just kind of, amongst, you know, hyper liberals, I don't bother weighing in. Maybe that's cowardice, but
Is it like so bad in Canada that if you weigh in on abortion, you'll be labeled a nasty name?
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because yeah,
because
because
nothing says, you know, women are free, like, you know, I mean, who are these doctors that do this? I mean, how could you possibly stick a spike in the head of an infant that you're
Yeah.
It's so inimical to the
it's
Hippocratic
just
Oath.
so
Do no harm.
disgusting.
yeah, it's pretty much like they went through like the whole Romans 1 thing where they reached the lowest level.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's like, would you approve of this being done to a dog? And if not,
Yeah.
why would you approve of this being done to a child?
Yeah,
That's
it's
interesting.
They must be
cognitive.
psychopathic. These doctors have to be psychopaths to some degree. I mean, there's no way you could engage in that just completely disinterestedly. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't see how
Yeah.
you can.
I mean,
It's gotta
it
be.
was like this was last year when I was talking on a Facebook group under like my, well, I was using a pseudonym that's similar to the one that I'm using right now, except my last name was different. I used more of an anglicized last name, but basically, like I got into an argument with this nasty pro-choice person. I posted these like images of babies that are like torn apart, and I said like, and he was acting like all like it didn't phase him at all, and it just angered me so much that like I've pretty much attacked him and said that he has absolutely no heart, and like people like you like need to be removed from society. And he took that as like a threat that he said he'll report to the FBI. And I pretty much deleted my Facebook account and everything, and the email linked to the Facebook account, because I thought he was serious. Because I mean, I didn't immediately delete my account, but I told him like, what? You can't be serious that you're reporting me to the FBI. It's crazy.
Having their conscience seared, isn't that the Romans? You were quoting Romans 1, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's the exact reverse of a traditional European Christian society, and that's where these people are, because in a traditional European Christian society, it's taken as axiomatic that, of course, you would never, you know, tear a baby from the womb of its mother, and that's based on something objective, something, you know, it's not a relativistic argument. It's absolute, and of course, you know, no one would even suggest that. You know, it would hardly come about, you know, except in a secret conversation. But that's, you reverse that, and you have this secular orthodoxy, and you know, someone like William or me or any of us, and they don't really have anything to base it on, including facts, and so that's why they melt down. And
yeah, they do have something to base it on. Like whatever the Bible says, do the exact opposite of it.
Well, what they have to base it on is the you know, the Marxist you know, people who shape our culture. You know, they're once they're given a reason to think that someone is evil. Actually, I should back up. Once they're given a reason not to think, you know, when they're handed a card or whatever, you know, it enters their brain through the TV or whatever. You know, this preset, you know, easy to remember set of rules. You know, diversity is good. You know, critical thinking, if it leads to this, is bad. It's just easy, and you can demonize people. It's,
yeah, that's sorry, I have like a bit of a so many thoughts are going through my head. Yeah, it's pretty much I don't think the culture that emerged, liberalism as it emerged out of the West, I don't think it could possibly emerge in any culture except for a Christian culture. Like, there's no way that something like this could emerge out of Confucius China or Hindu India, or even out of the Islamic world. Like what we're seeing with liberalism, it could have only emerged out of Christendom, because it takes all the values of Christendom and Christianity and flips them on their head.
but it exploits them. It exploits them for, you know, and we don't really even need to go into who did it, who exploited them, but it leaves them open to exploitation for
Right.
for nefarious purposes. And you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You know, I mean, it's good to have these, if you're evolving in Europe, if you're living in Europe, you know, these attributes are good to have, but they do leave you vulnerable. And like, you know, like China is doing some excellent genetic research, especially in intelligence, and you know, the Chinese aren't afraid to say, you know, yes, there are racial differences, you know, when it comes to cognition and problem solving, etc. And so yeah, I mean, we are kind of, you know, vulnerable to that that fault.
Yeah.
You know, on the subject of China or Asian countries being more recognized, being able to recognize racial differences, it reminds me of I think actually I heard somebody like Jared Taylor, somebody talk about this recently, but back in the, I think it was 1986. Yeah, I was watching some old baseball games on YouTube that included, like, I think it was the in 1986 the California Angels won the AL West title, and so somebody uploaded the game where they clinched the division and included the news afterward. And so it's interesting to look at old newscasts. And one thing that was in the news at the time was that some government official in Japan had made the comment that, like, America doesn't do as well academically because they have so many blacks or something like that. And he was forced to apologize. And they showed him, like, reading his apology at a press conference in English. And he's like, and I don't think he used the word diversity, but he was saying the typical, even back in '86, he was saying the typical sort of like a news speaker, whatever it is, like about the like, yes, I know that America. I apologize for what I said because I know that America has benefited from its multitude of cultures or, whatever kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I think it's like this, wow, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, I get it. Was he allowed to keep his job back then?
I assume so, because, I mean, he's just giving an apology. I don't think he was being fired or anything. I'd have to look into it, though.
I mean, I would love to go back to the time when you just simply had to give an apology for saying something that's racist.
Yeah.
Because now, like, you would not only lose your job, you would never be employed again ever in your life. And
Well, this is.
could,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and it could be, and it may not be because you're actually a racist. It could be like you're kind of speaking off the cuff, being honest, and people perceive it as racist, or maybe you misspoke, as many people do, and because of that one mistake, you have to starve to death. It's like, it's just crazy.
Do you think under it's kind of, well, a couple things here. Under Trump, that might change.
Well,
it already kind of has.
Well, I hope so.
I read the most. I won't read it out because it's again a woman I know, but she had the most hilarious post where she was in a woman's consignment shop, and the shop guy in his 60s, I guess, and I guess he was on the phone to his wife or his woman, and he was just commenting about the clothes he was picking out, and that she looked good and some of them are sexy or something, and she said he was being loud and blah, like she's really kind of paranoid like this, like super SJW about male aggression and all this stuff, and he was saying this is because of Trump. This is only one day in. This is already what's happening. That men are feral now. They're wild, grabbing women by the.
Well, meanwhile, if it's a Dindu, looking at something from World Star Hip Hop on his phone and like, look at that bitch, whatever. I mean, it would be.
Yeah, just cool, culturally.
Yeah,
cool.
And to answer your question, William, yeah, I do think. Here's something that kind of.
So I think she's right. I mean, I think she's kind of goofy, but I think she's also catching on to something that will be true. Whether it's true in this case or not, I don't know.
You mean like?
Well, I just think the jobs are more secure under Trump. I just think, I mean, Obama would defend the firing of somebody over saying something. Trump would be like, this isn't the
I think
America.
Enough people are going to act while strike while the iron's hot, because, and this is, I mean, I've recently, just the last couple of days, really, I've had to say to myself that I really give these young guys who have just been trolling hard for years now, and I got to give them credit, because this is stuff that most of us were afraid to do, and these guys, they pushed it, and to anyone that has a brain in their head, they can see that it's not just for the sake of trolling. It's not just for like, oh, I just want to, revel in my hatred, whatever. It's there's a reason, and I think I think that enough people, I think that it was done, down to the guy who yelled Pepe at Hillary's alt-right speech. I think that enough people, kind of see, where we've gotten to and what is possible, that they and it's kind of, you kind of have to get hyperbolic sometimes to push things, and I'm kind of hopeful. As Mark was saying earlier, we got a lot of work to do. It's not time to be complacent, but I'm definitely hopeful.
Yeah, even in UBC, I just saw an article. I haven't actually had a chance to. It was linked on a chat I'm on. Some guys at UBC, the Free Speech Club, put on their "Make America Great" hats and did a free speech thing in Canada. And people up here are freaking out, like they're going hardcore, because they think that you know, they're wanting to build a wall themselves or whatever, right? There's all this. It's unbelievable, the triggering, because we just got the glorious, you know, Sparkle Pants, Prime Minister Sparkle Pants, was elected just recently, and everybody was in love with him. But he's such a deceiver, right? He's completely let them down on one thing after another. But because he shows up at pride parades and takes little photos, you know, he's making a heart with his hands over his heart, and he, you know, has a pink back. He's just a total deceptive faggot, you know.
Are most voters in Canada women?
I think that's all we. I think so. I don't know that. I don't have.
Yeah,
that
because that would explain a lot.
Yeah.
Not just that, but you know, you know, look at the men. The men have been feminized. You know, so
Yeah.
they're effectively women. You know, I mean, but you know, this is a, you know, it's kind of a mandate against globalism. You know, that we're seeing, I think, and between Brexit and this, and I think, you know, like the woman that you were talking about, William, you might be giving her a little bit too much credit, but I think they sense that there's a little bit of blood in the water, and that's why it's up to us to, you know, to push. And this is why I say I give these, you know, these younger guys, like at the right stuff, I give them a lot of credit, because that's what it took, and we can't let up. And you know, the woman vote, you know, and the men who vote like women, you know, it's that's something we're going to have to work on.
Yeah, it's kind of like all this trolling. I mean, the reason why people on our side are doing it is because it works for the left. The left have been jamming the narrative for so long, especially on social media. Like, my God, have you seen like so many rainbow filters? Like when Obergefell, whatever you call it, like gay marriage pass, it's like,
yeah.
Like probably your entire friends list was filled with rainbow filters up in Canada, William.
Oh God, yeah. And the thing was, it was known soon after to have been a Facebook social, like social response experiment.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to see how quickly that would spread, and they monitored it and did some measuring of it and so forth. You know.
Yeah. And that guy, I mean, Zuckerberg's a complete fraud. Like his feeds are the trending hashtags. They're totally fake. They're totally engineered to favor stories that make the left look good and the right look terrible.
Yeah.
Well, and it's because of stuff like that that we need to double down, because that's what they're going to do, and they have people like Zuckerberg behind them. They have the intelligentsia in the media. They have in academia, they have the corrupt media. They you know, in the bureaucracy, you know, they have that. So we need to double down, and most likely we're only going to be doubling down in the interests of you know, burning the whole thing down, because that's going to happen. But we need to do it in our interests, in our favor, to awaken our brethren, to get people ready, and we can't let up. We can't let up now. I mean, the victory is sweet. I mean, I'll never forget it. You know, it's beautiful, and but we need to push harder than ever. And going back to William's point, yeah, I think it's going to become more. You know, I mean, I remember 5 years ago, a class I had, they kind of got it. They wouldn't get too loud about it, but they'd you know, they'd be like, "What do you want to do for lunch today?" That's racist. You know, they were joking. You know, they were making fun of the fact that everything's racist. So, you know, I mean, it's there's fertile ground out there, and we need to have good leaders who can sort of marshal the masses.
You're absolutely right. And I had this conversation yesterday with my friend Greg. We were meeting just outside of a restaurant. And it was a nice conversation. Like he was talking about like how we conservative right-wing Christian people have to have our own businesses, kind of like the conservative version of Starbucks, where how, or Target, where like those companies are champions for gay causes. Like we need to have our own companies like that, so like we could like form our own economy. And I kind of agreed with him. And the caveat that I added was that like we shouldn't bring the politics into like the business itself, but like just give our political opinions as entrepreneurs in privately, like the owner of Chick-fil-A did, and that would cause the whole controversy that turned out to work out to the benefit of Chick-fil-A. And if more like conservative entrepreneurs do that, I think it would be great. And well, on top of that, it's also important for like there to be right-wing art, because there's too much liberal art out there. Like we're full of liberal arts, no pun intended. And we don't really have to tweak the formula that much to create good conservative art. We could just take something like V for Vendetta or The Hunger Games, for example, where it's all takes place within a dystopian right-wing dictatorship or theocracy, and the revolutionaries are the leftists, and they're the good guys. We could just flip it and make it into a dystopian left-wing dictatorship where the rightist revolutionaries are the good guys. We don't have to reinvent the wheel that much.
Well, the thing is, the art, yeah, art plays a part in any culture, plays a significant part, and just weeding out a lot of the degenerate stuff and the the low, well, I was going to say the lowbrow stuff. That's kind of good for the propaganda, but and once again honoring skill, realism, painters that can get beyond the abstract stuff. That's important. But as far as businesses and that's what we need to remember, is that our adversaries, they've already not only foreseen that, but they've taken steps to deal with it. Like when a baker doesn't want to make whatever a phallus and a butt as a cake for a gay wedding, whatever. I can't remember what that story was. Then they'll be charged with a hate crime. So I mean, I think a more grassroots sort of approach is going to be the produce the groundswell. That's kind of what happened with Trump. It's the lower class, lower middle class, the non-intellectual working class whites who are tired of being excoriated simply for existing. When they pay their taxes, they adhere to law and order, and those are the people that need to be reached. And part of that is just as many people as possible who can show that yes, you can talk this way, you can tell the truth. It will have, I think, a somewhat viral effect. It'll spread. People will see that.
Has Trump pushed? Because I mean, it should become clear to people in that case that the hatred is in making somebody bake a cake against their will. Like that is hatred.
Yeah.
Hatred is not wanting to bake cake because you can find somebody else to bake your damn cake. Like it's not. And so I've not heard him talk much about it. But
well, the thing about Trump is,
which is freedom of association.
Well, people are a little bit, people in our circles we're naturally cynical, and that makes sense, and we should be. But the thing about Trump that I think we should remember is that he just did not care. Like every time they came at him, he hit back. He hit back. When was the last time you heard of any politician, anyone running for office in the West, on air, call out the media for being corrupt? When did you see someone troll the media? He got them all to come to that press conference, and who comes out? The women who accused Bill Clinton of rape. So I mean, that's who he is. And what kind of became more and more clear to me as I was watching this develop was, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy is he's used to winning. He's an alpha male. He got, Putin said something, and it was just, this is what men do. This is what, Putin said something kind of calling him out a little bit, and some reporter, kind of gloatingly said to Trump, "Oh, did you hear about what Putin said?" And Trump said something like, "Yeah, he just needs me to hit him in the mouth," or something like that. And then Putin said, "Yeah, I like this guy." Duterte, the Philippines, he's given favorable response. So, I mean, Trump kind of doesn't care. I mean, yeah, he's going to have to, he'll have to moderate in some areas to get stuff done, obviously, but he knows how to do this. He's, he knows how to win. He knows how to succeed. And that's what we need. We need someone that says, go ahead, you can keep biting my ankles, and, meanwhile, I'm up here getting stuff done. You can thank me later. Or you can, get
I mean, this is the thing with the left, basically say, oh, he's just a showman or whatever. No, but this part of the whole thing is just perception management. I mean, the actual work hasn't gotten started, and his resume is that he is a billionaire and he knows how to, and he knows how to deal at a high level financially and with governments and everything. So, I mean, of course, it's different when he's actually acting in things, and this is about strength of character and courage and maybe just bullishness as well. But you don't necessarily want to like the president. I mean, this is the thing about Obama. Everybody wants to like him, right? Everybody, he's the likable black guy. White people can like him because he's he looks more like a
he's like a black one of us.
A post-colonial African than he looks like a post-slave American black, and he isn't. He's not related to even the genetic stock of the American black slave from West Africa. He's a whole other animal altogether. It's very strange, anyway.
Yeah. Well, if you look at, just as a, extremely oversimplified example, look at an alpha wolf or an alpha dog. They are quiet. They're not. They don't go around barking and yelling unless someone challenges them, and they put them in their place. They come back hard. They put them down. They wait till they roll over on their stomach, and then they're quiet again, and they go about their work, and they keep things together. And that's, I think. And this is what freaks out the left. This is what freaks out the R-type personality. It's like, oh my God, he wins and he's not ashamed of it, and he keeps doing it even when we tell him it's bad. And it's so. Yes, we should be cynical. Yes, we shouldn't expect too much. Yes, we shouldn't see this as the end of start dancing to Happy Days Are Here Again, whatever.
Skeptical, maybe not cynical.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, I foresee good things. We'll put it this way. It's for him to show us that he's not going to do it, and I just don't see him doing that. I think he understands too well that if he plays the game, it's going to not only result in him losing, but it's gonna tarnish his name, and it's gonna make it more difficult for him to get elected again. And I'm guessing he's going to want to. So
Yeah.
so we'll see. I mean, but I more than any other president I know of, I have hope for this guy.
Yeah.
Well, at least he's going to provide his space. Could you imagine Hillary in and the hate speech laws that would definitely come in? I mean, it would have been a hell.
Yeah,
Like, we would
it would have been hell on
heading
earth.
for a really bad scene. Like, America would have been angry Canada, you know, mean, nasty Canada.
I mean, we probably would move to North Korea at that point.
For relief. Yeah. North Korea is an easier place to live than here.
Good looking through their Juche filter.
Yeah. I mean, the very base Koreans can move to North Korea.
So what's your take, LUE-YEE, on you know, how are you feeling in the wake of this momentous occasion?
Yeah, I think Trump has opened up a lot of space. I think, you know, persecution is still, I mean, people are going to fight hard on the state level and local level, and even try to subvert, you know, whatever we want to get accomplished on the federal level. But I think the fact that Mr. Trump has become president-elect, even now, I saw on Twitter today someone was talking about you know, an anti-Trump protest on campus, and she said that there was a counter-protest, and that was interesting because she'd never seen this before. And then it was like 50 people and 50 people. That's certainly something that we haven't seen on university campuses. So I think it gives us, you know, even with whatever persecutions may come, may be attempted, or may follow even a failure of a Trump presidency. Let's say there's blowback and Michelle Obama becomes president.
Oh my God!
I think even having 4 years is a good time for us to use to, as a church, I think learn what it means to be people who are able and willing to suffer. We don't want to be people like Russell Moore, who are just chasing after the approval of the New York Times crowd. We want to be people who would be able to take martyrdom if that were to come unexpectedly, and not just for, you know, I don't think all martyrdom just comes because people are worried about which god you worship. I mean, in fact, you know, if we look at Rome or something, that's not exactly what Romans worried about, right? They were not worried about people believing that some Jew was the Messiah, the savior of the world, and stuff like that. I mean, there's clearly they had no trouble with people worshipping the Persian god Mithras. But they did have a problem with Christians, and I think it's because the Christian religion actually challenged certain elements of their civil religion that they expected everyone to take part in, and it was not something that was able to be co-opted or subsumed into their existing religious system. And so that represented a very different kind of thing to deal with, and it wasn't something that they, well, it was, that was actually something that caused them to go, you're not good citizens, you subvert the order that we have. And I think that that's the kind of thing that's going to draw persecution, and we have to be able to say the things and do the things that that draw persecution, not out of a desire, of course, to make people persecute us, but just
In the interest of the
because
truth.
those are the things that Christians do. And if we have 4 years, let's say we have 4 years, because, well, there's we don't know what the next election is like. So let's say we have 4 years. That's 4 years that we have to try to learn and to teach the rest of the church to not be afraid of these things, to really return to what God says in the Bible, and re-examine some of our misinterpretations, I think, that a lot of the church has taken in because of the liberal environment. Let's return to the sources, see what God actually says, see what God does not actually say that we may have thought that he said, and commit ourselves to, I think, being honest about what God says and what God doesn't say, be honest about political systems and all kinds of things, and be lovers of the truth and willing to die let's not talk about dying. Let's talk about being willing to lose jobs, or actually suffer substantially for these things. And I think it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, and it's like, am I echoing?
Slight bit.
Yeah. It's
Well, we can tell you're going to say something pharisaical.
If you're,
yeah. So I mean, people talk a good game about like being faithful to Christ when persecution comes, but what drives me crazy is when many people who claim to be Christian would say stuff like, "Oh, well, if you don't bake a gay wedding cake, that's not persecution because you brought onto yourself." And even like Christians, supposedly conservative Christians, say this as well, and it just drives me crazy.
Or they'll say things like, "Don't you people understand grace?" I'm like, understanding grace has nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Or they confuse the three uses of the law as well. Like,
Yeah.
they confuse the law as a bridle with the law as a mirror. Like
Right.
they confuse the law to restrain evil versus the use of the law to point to the gospel.
Yeah.
Or they say crazy stuff like, we don't even need the law, we just need the gospel. Like we could, and they would preach the gospel without the law, and it just like creates a bunch of like Christians who are super Pharisees, yet they call everybody else Pharisees.
Right.
I think these super grace Christians are the most legalistic Christians in the world, even more so than any traditional fundamentalist or traditional whatever.
Right. And, of course, in between, we have a lot of Christians who are just, they're surrounded by this. They hear that kind of talk in the church. They're just confused about a lot of things, and they have intuitions, but they're, ordered in strange ways. So let's take the case of capital punishment or something like that. I think a lot of Christians do believe that capital punishment is immoral. that it's
Yeah, I mean,
against the gospel, and that God doesn't approve of capital punishment. So
Yeah.
when I make my case, I'm saying, look, let's see all these cases um, in which God orders these things, and they go, well, we're in the New Testament, and I have to say, well, okay, but do you really want to say that God ordered things that were not morally correct in the Old Testament? Well, of course they don't want to say that. I mean, okay, some might, but most Christians are not going to say that. They know that's wrong. And you say, well, okay, if God has the same character today as he had when he wrote the Old Testament, then clearly it's not intrinsically wrong to kill someone for crimes, specifically.
Right.
And they say, well, yes, but what about the New Testament? And you say, yes, indeed, what about the New Testament? Well, it is true that the New Testament has something to say about the way that we set things up politically, but that doesn't change the character of God. The character of God is the same. So what that does change is considerations of prudence. What we expect to happen in the future, what we know is the case right now. These are considerations that go into what we think will best serve the common good, which is not a question of whether it's absolutely wrong to execute people, but what we actually think is the best way to deal with what we've got under the circumstances that we know Christ has been made King of the world, that we know Christ is going to return to judge the nations, and that we know Christ has also set us to the work of converting, or not converting, but of proclaiming the gospel to all nations, and even in the criminal justice system, showing certain signs of his grace and his mercy. So that's a prudential consideration, and Christians go, okay, that makes a lot of sense, and that they at least have then begun to question the claim that God just disapproves of all executions. We need to abolish capital punishment because that's absolutely wrong, right? They're thinking about prudence and things like that.
Yeah, and also I use this argument whenever I get into discussions with Christians about capital punishments. And just because somebody's being capitally punished doesn't necessarily mean that they're condemned spiritually. A capital punishment may actually be very merciful because it presents a perfect missionary opportunity for somebody to evangelize the inmate on death row, because what better time to evangelize to somebody except in a time when he's the most vulnerable, when he's when he's about to face eternity, as opposed to, living decades in prison and adopting a homosexual lifestyle and, learning how to become a worse criminal than you were when you first got in.
Right.
Yeah, there are times when and Russell Kirk made this point. He's someone I kind of used to get into, but there are times when it's actually merciful to someone, to do so.
Yeah. I mean, I think even pedophiles deserve mercy. As controversial as that may sound, I think the death penalty is more merciful to pedophiles than the current punishment.
And that was exactly Russell Kirk's point. It's like some people are broken, and if you can admit that, is it really fair? are you really doing them a favor, you know, to keep them alive? I'm going to say goodnight to William. He's taking off. So take care, William. God bless. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to hang out with you guys again.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming. It's good to have
It's
you.
always good having you.
God bless and good night, and make good use of these 4 years.
Amen.
At least 4 years. Because maybe maybe Trump Jr. will be the next president.
Yeah.
Right.
I heard he hangs out on pole.
Yeah, I know. I think
The rumor, at least.
Yeah.
I think he's closer to us than. Yeah. Anyway. Night, lads.
Have a good one.
God bless.
So LUE-YEE, I wanted to mention, talking about, how Christians can suffer, and I kind of think that plays into this election and what I was mentioning earlier. You know, it's like, I'm feeling great right now because of this victory, but up until it happened, like all of us, it's painful, living in, living in a society that's just so clearly decadent, so unapologetically decadent. But the thing is, because you know how to suffer, you can persevere, you can win a victory like this, you can get through the cataclysmic events that are likely to follow. And
Right.
ultimately, and we've said this in this chat in times past, we know when it comes down to it, who's in charge. We already know the ending, and that doesn't mean we know all the individual parts of the story, that apply to us, but that suffering is and this is what one of the things that people use to mock us about, and not just on the left, on the right sometimes too. They think that we make a fetish out of suffering, but it's what makes the trials of life bearable, and it's what preserves us and helps us to keep our sanity, so that and when you look at these people freaking out right now, they don't have that, and what a shame. What a shame. And it also enables us to, I think, be more compassionate, Millennial Woes made a video about it, maybe be ready to reach out to these people who might be on the verge of considering our point of view.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people on the other side. I mean, especially the ones who grew up with neck deep in liberalism, especially who grew up, always being attacked for being white or being a man. And I have a friend in real life that's he grew up on the Eastern Seaboard, and it's on Virginia Beach, and it's crazy out there. I mean, with feminism and everything. I think I told you about once, and how he can't find a partner in life because all the white women are so feministic and so paranoid about this and that, about male dominance, about racism, and it's just nuts.
Well, I mean, it's just so common. It's just so common now. And if you're a Christian, you can kind of put it into perspective. You can, you have the lens of the past to see that we've been through this before. And if you're the average person, and this is, this is the genius of the cultural Marxists. They knew that if they undermined the family, if they got into the church, and we were talking earlier about the Japanese politician who had to apologize, for pointing out the obvious and intelligence differences. What better way to, influence the world with your poisonous ideas than to infect the nation that kind of leads the world, that has the lingua franca of well, the language, but also just money and economy.
Yeah.
So these people, they don't have that perspective that we have, and so to avoid despair, and we have a way of dealing with that too. They just kind of fall into line, and that's the genius of it's evil, but it's still genius. The system of cultural Marxism.
Speaking of which, I think Christianity is very important to. Well, obviously, we know that Christianity is important because we're Christians, but the only group that will offer a consistent and reliable opposition to the left into the coming future, into the coming centuries, as will be the church. I mean, forget about all these neo-pagan, alt-rightists, these atheistic eugenicists. Like, they're mostly irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need to, all of us are going to need to work with anyone we can. Which is why, on one hand, I can decry Milo Yiannopoulos and Ben Shapiro as degenerate or deceitful, duplicitous, and conniving, but at the same time can see some value in leading people across the the waters that they fear to tread through. But yeah, I mean, the church has endured. It always will. Christ promised it will, and we kind of live or die on that alone. Either you believe it and you persevere, you get through whatever, or you fall apart. And so it's a simple choice that entails a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And I think once you reject liberalism, once you reject the Enlightenment, the philosophical basis for atheism and rejecting Christianity just falls apart.
Well, I think some people have problems with the institution of the church and how it has itself supported various forms of liberalism, and they'll even say, the Roman Catholic Church is totally Jude. I don't want to be associated with that kind of religion. If I converted to anything, it'd be the Eastern Orthodox Church or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, they have a sense of what's wrong, and they may not even know to what extent they believe in God or not. I think I know people who sometimes come off as atheists, but then they, I feel that other times they're speaking as people who've just been very disillusioned about the church and don't know or aren't sure anymore what they think God is, because other times they say, if there is a true church, it's not such and such, blah blah blah, or or they even say things sometimes like, I do believe in God, just not that. Okay, are you a Christian, a neo-pagan, or an atheist? Because I'm not sure. You're kind of just floating around in that space there, and I'm not sure you are sure what you are.
Yeah, I think that's how most people are. Even most social justice warriors are like that.
Well, and nationalism, any functional nationalism, we'll have room for all of these people. Ideally, I would like to live in a Catholic monarchy. That's what I would like. But I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. And you know, I get that, and you know, it would be nice, but you know, there's nothing in my mind. There's no inherent insurmountable conflict between someone like me, who, you know, is a traditionalist Catholic, and someone who's just, you know, really big on whatever, some esotericism from Evola or Nietzsche, whatever it is. You know, as long as we agree that, you know, there are certain things that we need to do to preserve our ability to live this life, to follow these currents of thought, and to reproduce, you know, and that's what's most important. You know, there will always be time for civilized debate, but we don't have, you know, there are too many people within our borders who will never engage in civilized debate, and we have to deal with that. We have to deal with that first.
I will note that that sounds like a pretty Protestant view of the Commonwealth.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, like I said, I would be most happy living in, you know, under a Catholic monarch. That's what, yeah, that's what I would like. If I could, I'd get into a time machine and, you know, go back to Spain, you know, right after the Moors were driven out, something. But, you know, again, you know, it's, you know, if I could at least live in a society where it wasn't like this weird novel thing to go to the Latin Mass, you know, to you know, to publicly state that there's something wrong with homosexual marriage, you know, that that abortion is, you know, a despicable act of violence. That would be a great start if I could have that. Or if it was okay to, you know, to say
go to TLM as long as you don't practice taquilla.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Do you watch? Yeah, sorry if I'm interrupting. Do you watch Red Ice Radio or the Red Ice YouTube channel?
Sometimes. Yep.
They have a lot of good material on there. Like the last video I was watching from them was by this young female filmmaker called Emily Eunice. Like she's pretty edgy. Like she's like full 1488. It's like too edgy even for me, like for most of us.
Not edgy, that's just immature, but okay.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I mean, that you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And again, those people, you know, I mean, those are people we're, you know, we'll work with, and you know, there will be, of course, there will be, you know, ideological fractures that will need to be dealt with. But you know what? When you have when you get rid of democracy, when you have a strong hierarchy, those things are dealt with, and they're dealt with decisively, and you move on. You know, I mean, you know, now when it's like this, when it's just this ridiculous, you know, hodgepodge of, you know, like an open bazaar of ideas, and you know, when you have like just like patently absurd, you know, like it's kind of like taking, you know, a book by Shirley MacLaine, or, you know, something about astrology, and putting it next to the Summa by St. Thomas Aquinas, and saying that these two things are, you know, have equal merit, or at least have, you know, an equal, you know, right to be, you know, to compete with each other. That's what we have right now.
Right.
And again, we're at the beginning. You know, this Trump victory. You know, the earthly minions of Lord Keck, you know, have, you know, really they laid a lot of the groundwork. You know, they've been going at it for a while, and we've got a great start, and it's just at the beginning, and there's so much work to do, and we do have very good minds in our loose movement, and if nothing else, you have to just be excited that you know, after being told, and after, you know, most of us, and I say Westerners, you know, believed it, that there's no way we can win, there's no way we can, you know, fight progress, or, you know, it's the current year, whatever. We did, you know, and that's exciting, and it's a, I'm really grateful to have seen it.
Right. Like even like young filmmakers, like artists like Emily Eunice, like even though like she's like a little immature with her 1488 stuff, like we should still support artists like that, you know, because it's the artists like that, like any right-wing artist, you know.
Yeah, as long as they're not like blatantly, you know, just doing things out of vanity.
Yeah.
I guess. You know, I mean, there's a process. You know, I mean, I called myself, you know, first I called myself a moderate liberal, or whatever it was, a middle of the road. Then I called myself conservative, but no, I'm not racist. See, because of this, because I know this person and we're friends, and no, don't. I'm not a racist, you know. And then that I called myself whatever, a race realist, and so there's a process, you know. There's a spectrum, and as long as you're on that spectrum, you know, past a certain threshold, then, you know, there's you should be treated with, you should be given the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
Yeah.
As long as you're not like totally doing wicked things that we can't, you know, of course we can't support.
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Yeah. You mean like Milo?
No, I think he means things that are a little bit more dastardly and probably violent.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can't. We do have to say we don't support
degeneracy. Yeah.
Milo's degeneracy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I do so vociferously, in so much as one can be vociferous while typing, you know, on various YouTube videos. You know, like just to remind people, it's like, yes, this is a good thing. He's helping us out, but he's degenerate. Don't forget it.
Yeah.
And he knows. I suspect he knows that. You know, I suspect.
Some people think it's just an act.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. You know, I mean, they're you know, the human mind. It can be a very surreal place, and who knows, you know. But yeah, I mean, the point, I think, is that we're at a place now where people are talking about things that are degenerate, you know, as opposed to knowing it was degenerate, but knowing that you can't say anything, you know, you have to lie about it.
Yep.
That's good. You know, there's progress.
True. Progress.
In the good sense, you know, not the...
Yeah, of course.
Upward progress, not forward progress.
Yeah, the actual progress, you know, deriving from, you know, a different route than RE, you know, it's not regressive. It's actually moving in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, it's things are in flux right now, and people like us should cleave close to the Word of God. You know, Jesus is about order, and you know, he'll get us through this, and you know, help us to keep perspective.
Right. You talk like a Protestant. You talk more like a Protestant than most Catholics I've heard.
Well, I mean, if you ask me, I'll tell people point blank, you're not going to go to heaven unless you're a Catholic. I mean, I'll say that. But you know, for the interest of, you know, what we're doing right now, you know, I will, you know, I won't get too theological. You know, again, you know, and not only that, but I'm American, and you know, America was founded not only by Protestants, but you know, a large part of our history is you know, unvarnished hatred of Catholics. I mean,
right.
So whatever, I get that, but
it was founded by a lot of heretics too.
Yeah.
Unitarians.
Well, you know, again, you know, the issue. You know, I'm sure we've all heard this. You know, Ben Franklin, you know, noted that we could have a problem with Germans. You know, like you know, because Germans were not Englishmen. Yeah, they're white. You know, and that's a good thing. But you know, so that's, you know, we even though we founded our country on white identity, even within, you know, our you know, within our race, there are, you know, earlier Gregory was on, you know, someone from Romania, you know, they're not going to have a whole lot in common from, you know, someone from Portugal or Wales or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happened in America. You know, it's kind of like, all right, it's kind of bad enough. You know, we threw a bunch of, you know, diverse white people together, but then, you know, when Ted Kennedy came along and said, well, you know, we need to just open up the floodgates, and, you know, so we need to at least go back to, you know, the pre-1965 immigration laws, and then we can go from there. So yeah, I mean, I might sound kind of ecumenical, but I'm not. You know, I mean, I'm. It's part of the dogma of my church to state that there's no way to heaven except through the Church of Christ. So,
right. When you say Church of Christ, do you mean specifically the Roman Catholic Church under the Pope?
Yep. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I, you know, support the Pope in every way, but he's the Holy Father, and when he speaks on matters of the faith, then you know, he's in the right.
Right.
Unam Sanctam Church.
Yep. And you know, I mean, this is why so much of the Catholic Church got cucked, because too many Catholics didn't want to say that. You know, they you know, after Vatican II, it's like, oh, you know, we don't want to, you know, just a brief example. You know, I was a couple months ago, we were at the hospital, my Knights of Columbus Council. One of our brother knights was in the hospital, and you know, just had surgery, and a priest came by from, he's actually our council priest, and, you know, he's super liberal. You know, he led a rosary, and that was nice. And he's like, you know, I got to get going because, you know, what was it a couple months ago? Was it Ramadan? He's like, I have to go over to you know, a Ramadan festival for the, you know, the Turkish whatever group, and
wow, not only Muslim but Turkish.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
now
where
I'm really triggered.
Yeah, that's where we are. You know, it's like, and this is why when I go to Latin Mass, you know, it's like if I hear Muslims mentioned, it's going to be plain, it's going to be clear, it's going to be, yes, you know, these people are, you know, they're following a heretical version of Christianity. They're all going to hell, and it's like, you know, that's not hateful. That's not, but it's certainly not ecumenical, and, you know, so that's kind of, and this is kind of, I think, irrespective of our religion, people on the alt-right, this is kind of how we have to be with the left right now. You know, we can't, you know, and Trump did what he and again, he's playing his game. You know, he's gonna do what he needs to do. You know, he was kind of extending an olive branch and saying, you know, let's work together. But, you know, for us on the ground, you know, here on the you know, in the trenches, you know, we have to say, oh, you're on the ground and you're, you know, your eyes are still open, or you're trying to get up. Well, I guess I better kick you in the head again. Make sure you stay. I mean, that's kind of, and that sounds kind of ruthless and vicious and perhaps even unchristian to some people, but that's how the Moors were expelled from Spain. You know, and I'm not promoting violence here. That's not what I mean. I'm speaking figuratively, but that's kind of, you know, what conservatives have done all this time.
There's only one battle.
Yeah, the conservatives need to take off the kid gloves with the liberals. That's you're basically right there.
That's kind of what I was doing with my celebratory trolling after Trump won the election. Like
exactly.
Like,
yeah,
I did it too.
I remember there was this one guy who was saying something like, white people need to have a conversation with other white people about what happened. I just said something like, shut up, cuck. And he responds with a, like, what made you just wake up this morning and decide I'm going to be a troll on the internet? And I just said, because I despise liberalism and everything it stands for and the hell it's run. And I want liberals to be everything that makes liberals, like, I said them, like, just because basically I just said I want to destroy liberalism, and
you mean
when they're sad, that's good. What?
You mean shove them all in the oven?
Well, if you want to put it that way.
Well, I mean, it's like
I mean, that's just like kind of an edgy way of like saying get rid of them. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. If you have an enemy, there's a reason they're your enemy, and if you do anything to help your enemy, you kind of, at some point, you go from being a victim to a volunteer, and
Yeah.
it's if you're not helping to defeat your enemy, and again, it's like it's hard for effete, feminized, apathetic, secularized Westerners to wrap their heads around this. It's like, oh my God, I have to be mean. I have to hurt someone, and can I just give them, can I just put some image over my Facebook profile picture and we'll be friends and they'll be nice to me and whatever.
Right.
I mean, it's difficult, but it's necessary. That's how we keep moving ahead. And it's, it clearly just has not worked in the past. And that's why the alt-right started.
Meanness comes very natural to me. It's compared to a lot of other Christians. Like, I could just be as mean as easily as I could breathe air. And to other Christians, it's like, it's completely shocks them that there's a Christian even talking like that towards a non-believer.
Well, I mean, it's because this is what happens with relativism. There's this ambiguity. It's one thing if you're being mean because because you like it, because you're, for the sake of being spiteful, for the sake of, finding pleasure because someone is suffering. If that's your the core of what's driving you, then yeah, that's not right. But
yeah,
if you're fighting, you got to fight. You got. It wasn't nice to burn the Japanese infantry alive in the caves of Iwo Jima with flamethrowers. That wasn't nice. But you know
Right.
what? We won. And yeah, it's too bad it had to come down to that. But you worry about being a better person when you can. You can't worry about being a better person when you're having your when your life is in danger.
Like, I've had chat on Facebook with, when I said something mean. I don't want to give too many details, but it was mean in that, like, it was true. Like, I pretty much straight up told him the truth that, like, there's no way that you're going to get to heaven without Jesus. And, like, this other girl, like, she's a liberal Christian university student, goes to a Christian college, which, I mean, is more SJW than the secular colleges are. And it's like, she was completely shocked to say, oh, well, this guy's my friend. He's really just a nice guy. I'm a pro-life Christian too, and I'm able to get along with him just fine. And I was like, and there was this back and forth conversation, and I've asked her if there will be people in heaven that disagree with Jesus in any way, and she wouldn't answer the question. She will say, well, we all have different beliefs. And I said, answer the question. And she accuses me of not being able to have a straightforward conversation with her. Like, she says that I can't have a straightforward she can't have a straightforward conversation with me because of me, yet she refuses to answer questions. It's like completely twisted.
But that's, I mean, she's only a product of her times, of her environment.
Right.
And on one hand, you have to pity these people, and when it comes down to it, you probably have to pity who you used to be, because you probably had the exact same outlook you know, at some point. I did.
Never. I've never had the exact same outlook.
Well, I don't mean exact, but I mean you
Yeah.
know, this, you're kind of,
Something like it.
yeah.
Well, I've never like was a complete cuck like that girl. Like I was never like I was always unapologetic about being Christian, you know.
Well, it is ultimately, you know, it's sad, and you have to kind of pity these people because they're really just and they don't see it, but they're torpedoing their heritage and their people. But you can't at the same time feel pity for them to the extent that you begin to enable their pathology, you know,
Right.
and that's what conservatives do. Conservatives do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So little by little, you know, step by step,
Right.
you know, Millennial Woes did that video about the eventual collapse of the university system. You know, that's one thing that I'm gonna have my eyes out for, is, you know, the hope that it's going to be more and more clear that it's an untenable institution, you know, in its current form.
We should pray for the collapse of the university system.
Yeah, I do. I do. So did you guys, speaking of praying, did you guys, you know, pray fervently before the election and afterwards in thanks?
I was.
I wouldn't say fervently, but I probably did say a prayer.
I did. You know, I didn't pray a lot, but the prayer that I did make, you know, before the results started coming in, it was definitely in earnest.
Yeah. I was anxiously watching Florida because it kept going back and forth, and I was worried that you know, if Trump loses Florida, then there's no chance he would win the election.
Yeah, it was, you know, I don't know what it was. It was kind of nerve-wracking, but, you know, a point came when I just I just felt kind of a peace, you know, come over me, and you know, I it seemed to me that things were going well, but at the same time, I was able to say, you know, it's in God's hands, and if it doesn't go the way that we want it to, then, you know, that's just how it goes, and that's
Right.
But it was, you know, if for no other reason, just the prospect of, you know, losing the Supreme Court, that was just really causing me a lot of anxiety.
Right. Well, the most anxiety was that, you know, how they might put us, like, the hate speech laws, like them passing hate speech laws like they did in Canada and in England. That was like the one thing that I was most worried about, because I know that they're not going to reverse anything on gay marriage or abortion.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, we'll see how if we get some actual. And I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the Constitution, but if we get some actual constitutionalists who aren't afraid of upsetting the liberal orthodoxy, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm. It's that silly cliche, you know. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Right. I mean, even if they manage to overturn Roe v. Wade, it's like the culture has been engineered, whereby like it's gone to that point where even if you manage to appoint the people to overturn Roe v. Wade, it's like all the states and all the activist groups will all reject it, like all the blue states. and they will continue having abortions, and we will have people rioting on the streets and like topless protesters like crazy. It just like would not, because our culture has been so poisoned by feminism that, you know, in order to be a true abortion abolitionist, you need to go after feminism. You need to discredit and attack feminism, because like I interact with a lot of abolitionist groups on Facebook under my normie profile, and all they're concerned about is like getting rid of abortion, and that's good and everything, like, but they never talk about the deeper cultural roots that make abortion culture possible, which is feminism. Like, you have to destroy feminism in order to destroy abortion.
Well, you know, I have some hope when, you know, the gotcha media and dirtbags like Paul Ryan, you know, they tried to, you know, take the, you know, wanted to grab her in the pussy or whatever it was comment, and, you know, tried to, you know, demonize him with that, and it didn't work, and he got a lot of women voters, and, you know, I feel some hope when I see that, you know.
Yeah.
When there are enough women left who understand that they don't need to listen to you know, bitter, witless harpies, you know, who tell them to go against their instincts, which is
right.
You know, which is, you know, what leads a woman to desire a man with power, you know, and you know, there were enough women who got that. So
Yeah.
I have some hope. I have some hope. Of course, you know, after, and another thing that will always drive change, especially change back in the direction we're looking for, is suffering. And, you know, you know, when there's less and less money for entitlements, and, you know, people actually have to, you know, think about being accountable, you know, the more and more, you know, the natural gender roles, the, you know, just natural law, you know, it doesn't even necessarily need to be, you know, the laws of the church, which, you know, natural law is a part of, you know, will become more and more sensible and
right.
and clear. I'm looking for more you know, Schadenfreude worthy Facebook posts on my timeline. I've just been taking screenshots of all of them and putting them in a folder, you know, for posterity. You know, so my kids can say, "Oh my God, were people really that stupid?"
Yeah. You know, talking about the women vote, I mean, I think a lot of it is just men have to be strong. And I remember I saw a cartoon. I was thinking it was by Ben Garrison, but I'm not sure. It might have been by somebody else. But it shows some female reporter interviewing Trump, and she's acting all offended by him. But the little thought balloon says, "What a man!" Like so even though she's acting all like, I can't even, but like deep down she's actually finds that attractive.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's just, it's, I'm at a loss for words. You know, it's just ridiculous. You know, the you know, the idea that women should stop being women and men should stop being men, and you know,
me here.
Yeah, and you know, it's just the the issue with the thing with feminism is that, you know, just like Black culture is, you know, these people forget or just don't want to acknowledge that it's straight white men who gave them what they have. You know, that's why they have it. They didn't earn it. You know, they don't have, by their nature, you know, any claim on these rights, you know, and certainly not on the right to disparage and, tear white men down. And some women remember that. And I'm not saying that, you know, we deserve to, we deserve their obsequious, you know, bowing at our feet. It's not what I'm saying, but, you know, it's just a return to nature, which, you know, would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have some ideas on that, but I'd kind of like to discuss them privately. But I don't know. I had some. I was wondering if I've been mentioning this in the text chat earlier that I have some ideas I'd like to bounce off people, but I don't want to do them publicly. But I don't know. Like, do you guys want to wrap up the live part of this and continue offline?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we only got 5 viewers. All right. I guess I'll just wrap up and we can keep talking offline. So just say a quick shout out. Thank you to Gregory, CARLIN. Thank you to William Scott. Thank you, LUMEN. Thank you, Mark CITADEL. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, LUE-YEE. And for all our listeners out there, thanks for listening. It's been a good discussion.
And thank you to the Blessed Mother and to her son.
I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
God bless all. Make a